And we are live. Greg Berth, this guy lives in New Jersey. I've known him for a really, really, really long time. He says his beer is getting warm, so I think that that's a perfect opportunity to kick off this live chat. He says his beer is getting warm, so let me turn that off. So what's up, guys?
What's up?
You guys got a ton of snow today, huh?
Yeah, it's
at
least a foot.
Jesus. That's not very conducive to bike riding, huh?
No, I got my van stuck immediately, and then I got my Land Cruiser, and then didn't get that stuck.
Nice. So. Steve, no getting stuck?
No, but my house is completely without power. But
so, do you have power now? Or are you at work or what?
No, I went to work. I'm in a clandestine aerospace manufacturing facility drinking beer.
Nice, awesome. making sure that everybody's safe.
Nobody's safe.
So we got like 30 people in here already. We'll let this warm up for a little bit, but before we get into stuff, but yeah, we've had pretty good weather here. Some of the local trails are open, so I've been kind of getting to ride a little bit, going to New York State or whatever, but New Jersey shut down. I guess Colorado shut down, right? As far as riding legally?
We can ride.
Yeah, we can ride.
You could.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, I know there's trailheads that are they're policing trailheads to make sure there aren't too many people there, but it is definitely, I don't think there's been any calling off of riding yet.
No, sweet.
There would be civil war here if they prevented people from exercising.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. So we got 37 people in here. I think we need to wait till we need to get at least 50 people in here before we get into the meat of the subject. But is everybody sitting down tonight for this live chat with a cold beer? Is that the order of business? I got mine right here.
Got mine. New. Well,
oh, what do you got, Adam?
New Oscar Blues 2020 Barrel Age Series. It's delicious.
Steve, I saw the double IPA at the store this afternoon, but I figured I'd just go with Dale's because I figured maybe the double IPA I might start slurring in the middle of this live chat and stuff like that. And
right.
Somebody's got to moderate this thing, so I figure, I could always just shut you off if I need to, like this, and get rid of you if you start saying crazy stuff. So
yeah.
Moderators got to keep things together.
Appreciate
Greg Berth. What are you grabbing, Greg? Jason McConnell, he's got a couple squeebs in his, actually he has 3 squeebs in his garage.
Dang.
He's the guy in New Jersey that we're always making the other extra large frames that go to New Jersey for.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
One for you.
Nice. It looks like we have 51 people in.
Nice. So, all right. Well, let's first start off by introducing the crew. This is my YouTube channel, so hopefully most people know who I am. I started working with these guys about a year and a half ago now, give or take. And it's been awesome to be able to work with such a small group and have so much interaction and input and kick ideas back and forth. And when the guys that we're building bikes with are awesome riders, it definitely puts some trust in there as well. So I guess first person to introduce was the first person that I met from Reeb on a random mountain bike ride probably 2 years ago is Adam Procyse. So Adam, tell everybody about yourself, how long you've been working for Reeb, a little bit, about your bike riding background and stuff like that.
I'm Adam Procyse. I've been at Reeb for a little over 2 years, 2.5 years, I guess. Started off part-time to begin with, but then I went full-time, and the Squeen project was something that I got really involved with because I was riding carbon bikes that just broke all the time, and I was tired of it. So when I saw that there was an aluminum full suspension bike being built right in town, I wanted to know about it. So I knew about Reeb a little bit, followed along, and then started to follow along a little bit more. got in touch with the guys, and now here I am. So from Iowa. I've been riding single speed mountain bikes and full suspension mountain bikes for a long time. Race enduro. I ride BMX. I ride dirt jumpers. I just like bikes, I guess.
Yeah. So it was a coincidence that you were living in right near Reeb, right? I mean, it was kind of a coincidence that they were building aluminum suspension bikes and you were living there and you took an interest in the bike, right?
Yeah, so I was living in Boulder working at a medical machine shop, and actually one of the guys that worked in, I think, like the shipping department was an airbrush guy, and he knew about Oscar Blues and Reeb, and he's like, oh, they're looking for a welder. And this was like 5 years ago now. And I was like, oh, I'm a welder, but I don't think I'll ever be welding bikes. And because I always just thought it to be a hobby. But then fast forward a couple of years, and I was kind of wanting to get out of that job, and Reeb was a great opportunity to get into. So, yeah, I would say coincidence, but also I kind of gravitate towards those type of things. So, yeah, it worked out really well.
Yeah, so you pretty much joined Reeb right after they introduced the version 1 of the Squeen. And the difference between version 1 and version 2 is like night and day. I came on board when we had version 2, and just the improvements from the one platform to the other were not incremental. They were substantial changes. And then that was before we even went to version 3. So give us a quick overview of how you took that bike from version 1 to version 2.
So version 1, so the way that I got started with all of this was I reached out to Chris Sulfrian, who designed the original Squeen, and I asked if I could ride one. And this was right when they went into production on them. And he's like, well, we don't have an extra large yet, but by Friday I can make you one. So in a week, he turned out extra large Squeeb just for me to ride. And I took it out for a weekend and rode it, and it was amazing. It actually blew me away. I had some preconceived notions about it, but it honestly completely blew me away. And we were riding big trails here in Colorado, and I was really pushing it hard, and it was awesome. So when I came online, I pretty much just worked on helping with manufacturing and getting the bike more production ready to sell more of them. So that was with running the CNC machine, improving fit and finish, any hardware interface, really just providing a better fit up with cut tubes so Chris could weld them. So there was no design improvements when I started, but it was all just manufacturability and fit and finish.
Right. And then we came into the version 2, and there was a bunch of improvements. And then that's where Steve kind of gets involved. So we had a pretty good platform with version 2. I got on that bike. I thought it was one of the best bikes, honestly, the best bike I've ever ridden, just getting on version 2. And then you ended up roping in Steve. So Steve, let everybody know how you got involved with the whole Reeb team.
So I walked in the door to the barn one day. I just moved to Lyons, and there was some Instagram post saying we need people to help us make frames. We're selling a bunch of stuff, so we need some help. And I walked in there thinking that I'd, find a spot to like get outside the house, chamfer a couple of tubes. Turns out that there was a little more to it than that, and we ended up kind of going through the bike top to bottom, new tube set, a lot of new machine parts. We really, my engineering, manufacturing, machinist experience kind of one thing led to another, and we ended up making the bike a little more adaptable, a little more modern, geometry wise. Kind of made it easier to make in some ways. And but yeah, I mean, that's how I got involved. I kind of walked in the door and was hoping there might be a free beer there, and there was. So that was good.
Nice. So let's try to do some screen sharing here real quick. So where do I do this? I got some pictures of my bike. Can you see that? Did that pop up? No, there it goes.
Boom.
All right. So this is my Squeeb. This is my, no, let me go to my app and I'll show you my brand new Squeeb. So this is a bike I just built up. This is the latest version of the Squeeb. This is the 130 version. So when we came out with this bike, originally the version 2 Squeeb was a 145 millimeter travel bike, and we decided to split the difference and go into a 130 and a 150. Adam, you want to talk a little bit about how that came about?
Yeah. So I like to ride pretty big bikes. And so when I first came on, well, I guess I'll start from the beginning. When Chris first designed the Squeeb, the plan was to, I believe this was before I was working at Reeb, but I believe it was, the goal was for it to be a 120 to a 130 travel bike. And as the bike was designed and everything moved along, it ended up being more like a 135, 140 millimeter travel bike. Then when I started working at Reeb, the first big improvement we did to the bike was the rocker layout. We improved the leverage ratio, and we also added a bridge in the rocker, so the rocker bolted together so it could no longer move separately. And the change in that rocker and improving the leverage ratio boosted it to 145 millimeters of travel. And then when we came out with the version 3, continuing with improving the suspension kinematics and working on anti-squat, anti-rise, and really dialing it in for coil or air options, it grew to 150 millimeters of travel. When we realized 150 millimeters of travel may be perfect amount of travel for us that live in Colorado or people in California or people on the East Coast, we realized that we needed to have a shorter travel option. So when Steve came on, exactly, I think Jeff is a big component of the shorter travel option. So when Steve came on, our first project was working on the bottom bracket cluster area. We wanted to tie the bottom bracket, the main pivot, and the rocker pivot all into one machined component because it really makes the precision go way up. It makes it so we can have a longer seat dropper insertion. And when we were looking at the manufacturability of that, we realized that we could very easily do a modular lower shock mount to make it so that threaded parts in the frame are replaceable. So if you strip something out, you can replace it instead of just ruining the frame. And then also being able to adapt it for whatever type of riding you want to do. We really wanted to make this bike tunable to whatever. I mean, there's even more that we don't really list on the website of what you can do. But to keep it simple, we have it.
Give me 2 more of these, and I will provide 20 minutes of content on that.
Exactly. So Steve and I and my buddy Tyler Brady, we really went into the weeds with all of this, with making ideal suspension kinematic layouts for air and coil options. And then like in this photo, this is the short travel layout. And so you can run a shorter stroke shock to run less travel. So it's really adaptable, tunable, run different length shocks, and you can, run different length forks, and you can really change the whole feel of the bike. Like I have one set up right now with a really wacky rear shock layout with a short travel mount, but a 27.5 rear with a 29 front. And I have it set up as like a slope style bike. And it's awesome because it has like almost zero bottom bracket drop, so it's really poppy. And there's a lot of kind of can of worms thing that you can do to this layout, which is cool.
Steve, in response to your comment right there, we just got this one. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was showing. I've got the 6-pack, double IPA. What is the It's not safe. It's 8.2%.
That's one of the benefits of living in Colorado is that you can get the Oscar Blues drive-by delivery. We don't have that option here in New Jersey.
Yeah, no, it's a blessing and a curse. That's for sure.
Yeah, so Steve, when you were looking at the suspension kinematics and the layout, what led you to believe that it would be something that we could actually bring to the table as far as offering a frame that you could make 130 and 150 and still have good suspension kinematics, and also have the different shock positions to have a higher and lower leverage ratio position?
Yep, sure. So the process was a really cool one. Adam and I started talking, and we kind of went through how do you build a bike, right? How do you build a bike with the tools that Reeb has, with the skill sets that the folks at Reeb have, and that's actually honestly a really broad set of skills and a really fine-tuned set of skills, and so that discussion evolved pretty organically. We started by defining what are the key things to improve on a new generation of Squeeb. One of which was dropper post insertion. Dropper posts are getting longer. 125 mil used to be a big dropper post. Now it's 180, 200. How do we maximize the amount of dropper posts you can put into the bike? That led to us moving some of the pivot locations around. We really looked at what a trail bike and an enduro race bike needed to be with regards to having anti-squat that supported a peppy feeling bike, something that really like hits it when you pedal, and something that can climb well, something that's not going to get bogged down when you're plowing over Colorado's nasty like chunky stuff. And so we played around with kinematics, all with the idea that we were going to have to fit these long dropper posts, maximize standover, allow for the bikes to really be ridden hard. I see the couple of questions coming through. What's your CAD package of choice? Right now we're Fusion 360. That is a nice one. It's cloud-based. We can collaborate no matter where we're at. Anyway, so iterative process-wise, we got to this we can build a structure that puts all of the forces that you get through the suspension into machine pieces. We're no longer welding upper pivots and lower pivots together and having any additional manufacturing challenges with aligning those things. We looked at bearing alignment. How do you keep all of these bearings completely aligned so that through the range of travel you are not like experiencing any binding in the bearings? And it became pretty clear that we needed to machine the upper, the lower pivots into one piece. And at that point, we started looking at our tube sets, found some tube sets that worked, that met all of our stiffness strength requirements. They're like, this is a burly bike. It is absolutely for hitting hard. And we realized that we could also grow both the manufacturability and the tunability by having a modular lower link. So the way that you attach the shock at the bottom of the shock to the frame can float around if you have a bolt-on lower link. A lot of manufacturers do this. They don't all necessarily do it with the intent of having a wide range of options and a wide range of tunability built into the bike. So we started playing with that, and I immediately saw that there were a billion ways we could go, right? We could make regressive bikes, we could make progressive bikes. You can make it work for coil shock, air shock, big volume air shock, low volume air shock, whatever you want. So that prompted a whole other discussion, right? What does this bike need to ride like? How does it need to use this travel? What is it that makes the Reeb, the Squeeb, specifically fun to ride? Because there are definitely some elements that both of you tuned into on the V2 that we didn't want to lose as we iterated through to the V3. And that was honestly the hardest part of developing this, is understanding like how do we preserve the character of the bike while increasing the range of usability? So through testing, through some suspension, through some kinematic analysis and all that fun stuff that, like a beard helps with, we identified some locations where we could put lower shock mounts to let us use short shocks, long shocks, and achieve a similar feel no matter what the shock length, right? Like your 130 bike, Jeff, I've tested 130 bikes with their setup, and it actually feels the same, like ish, as the long travel bikes do in terms of how poppy it is, how responsive it is to pedaling, how all that stuff is. It's really consistent. You can build a really consistent bike. Yes, Jason McConnell. Nobody knows what kinematics are. Kinematics are how things move when you move them, right?
My brother says everybody take a drink when we say kinematics.
Kinematics. Anyway,
Kinematics.
So the bottom line is, we build a bike. You can put you could tell us what you want to ride and what shocks you want to run, and we've got some pretty solid off the shelf offerings, but the door is wide open to doing whatever a rider wants. And that's kind of like, you're not going to get that anywhere else. Well, I mean,
yeah, that's something that's really cool. That's something that's really cool. And riders are starting to learn about now. There's not really many frames on the market where you could call up and talk to somebody in the shop and have your suspension curve like anything that you could dream up. Like even if somebody wanted it more progressive or less progressive than what we currently offer, we manufacture to spec suggestions, but the sky's the limit. If somebody called up and they were the biggest suspension nerd in the world and they had something that they wanted to try, we could make it, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, one of the common questions.
Oh yeah, totally.
One of the common questions that comes up is, can you run at 27.5? And you can. We have a lower mount that works well with 27.5. To make it perfect, we recommend running a 170 travel fork. But if you're running wider tires like 2.6s, which will fit in our frame, you'll have a normal bottom bracket height even with a 160 fork. So there's tons of options available, and a lot of people are running mullet setups, which work perfect on our bike, and even 27.5 front and rear. But I will say that it is optimized for 29-inch wheels.
Yeah, so one of the questions on Instagram earlier was whether or not you could ride the bike plus.
So it all depends on how much clearance you want. There's tons of clearance for a 2.6 in the rear. The problem is the jump from 2.6 to 2.8. A 2.8 tire is too close for comfort. There are, I think, like one or two tires that are labeled as a 2.7. But the big thing is you got to actually measure your tires, because normally they're off by like up to a quarter inch sometimes. So I would say comfortably you can run a 2.6 in the rear, and whatever your fork will clear in the front. So if you wanted to run a 3-inch in the front and a 2.6 in the rear, the big thing with plus tires is it's really hard to find casings that are thick enough for how hard the squeeb wants to ride.
No, it's too hard to find casings for how hard you want to ride, how hard I want to ride.
Right.
For a lot of people on the East Coast, 2.6 in the back, 2.8 in the front would be just fine.
So Adam, you were saying optimally, if you were going to run at 27.5, you would want a 170 fork in the front, but that's with a 150 in the rear, correct?
I mean, or 130 in the rear.
Doesn't matter. Ride height's the same in the rear, no matter.
Yeah.
Right. True.
Yeah. So what makes it work so well is we run a fairly, I shouldn't say fairly high. We run a higher than average bottom bracket height, because a higher or less bottom bracket drop or slightly higher rise makes the bike more poppy. It's also, less pedal clipping, and a lot of people run flats, and having low bottom brackets makes the bike really dead and stable. but the problem there is it's dead. Like, you want a trail bike to be poppy and fun. So that's why we run it slightly higher, and that's why it works well with the 27.5 wheels. That we kind of bridge the gap between both of them, so it does work out okay.
Right.
Yeah, and between the long travel and the short travel settings, as we were kind of evaluating all these options, we realized there's an interesting thing. You run a longer fork. You run the rear shock at 30% sag on the short travel one, and it is higher because you're not sagging in as much. You run the long travel shock, and you run 30% sag. Bottom bracket gets lower. You need a taller fork. The geometry is really, really consistent as you switch between the short travel and the long travel if you run it at the recommended sags. But yeah, it's not, the long low slack has gone, pretty far. We actually like to ride over rocks. You don't need super low. You need low. You need nice low center of gravity, but you also want to be able to run, more than 160 millimeter cranks. So it is about right. With a 150 fork, 130 rear, 170 fork, 150 rear, the actual bottom bracket height's almost identical between those two settings.
So I'm scrolling up and seeing a lot of comments. You want to just do a couple comment answers real quick?
Yeah, so let's go all the way to the top, maybe starting at 805. Is that too far up for you?
So I saw one fairly...
Well, you can click on them too and put them on a screen, right?
Mike Murphy wants to know if you can run a 5-inch tire in the front.
You can.
Murph could.
Yeah.
Murph can. Yeah, that's the answer.
I think I lost it now, but there was a good one that there was one asking about a retaining ring clip. And yeah, there we go. Cole Trickle. No, seriously. Met this out in California. He ordered a squeeb, actually. I cannot click on them and put them on the screen.
Okay.
But so Cole Trickle asks, is that a C-clip holding the rocker bearing in? It sure is.
Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay.
So we added some internal retaining ring clips on the frame for easy serviceability and manufacturability. So in this specific instance, since this bearing, this is a pretty fancy bearing. It has a threaded internal race, and it also has a stepped shoulder. So that bearing presses in and is retained by that internal retaining ring clip. So it can't back out if there's any rear end movement. This also makes it so we don't have to run a extremely tight bearing press fit to make sure that bearing stays in. So that means you can pull that retaining ring clip and push that bearing out easy if you ever need to service it. We do the same thing in the main pivot rocker bore. Instead of using a traditional bearing seat, we use an internal retaining ring. Number one, that's so we can, when we post weld ream the frame, we can ream both bearing bores at one time. So this ensures, the highest level of precision with that bearing bore alignment. But also, if you need to knock one of those bearings out, since we have a bearing preload spacer in between those bearings, you can get more access to the outer race, so you can knock that bearing out if you need to replace them. So those internal retaining ring clips is really for us and for the customer when they need to service their bearings. I think below that we had another question that I saw.
All right, let's see.
Yeah, so the expanding on the CAD package of choice. So we use the Autodesk Fusion 360. The reason why we use it is because we're a small company. And when you start to get into big solid modeling softwares, and the software to post to your CNC machine, it starts to add up really quickly. And Autodesk did a really cool thing with coming up with Fusion 360 is they wanted to bring manufacturing back into the United States. So they made a CAM software that was easier to get into for small companies. So not only is it easier for us to use, but it is extremely powerful. I can, let's see, I'll,
yeah, I can expand on that a little bit too.
Yeah,
so
go for
I've got right, like I live in the aerospace world. I've got access to crazy shit. But Fusion 360 for what we're trying to do with these bikes is so much more than sufficient. It is really user friendly. It's really easy to share. It's like we're not trying to do a Fusion 360 ad right now, but it is absolutely the right CAM package for what we're trying to do. Adam and I have spent like a billion weekend nights just shooting files back and forth with a whole lot of pain-free experiences, and so that's what we use. It goes straight to the machines too, right? It also writes G code for CNC machines. It's what we use.
Yeah, so I'm pulling up one of the files for our bike right now, so I can share my screen and kind of show you what we're talking about. So let's see, share.
So Adam, make sure you don't do
my hair looks so good in quarantine because
what's up, Jeff?
I got real frustrated with not being able to come. Well, actually, Jeff did the same thing. Although I did a full mohawk, I just don't have the right product right now. Otherwise, it would be straight up. But
so Adam, make sure when you share your screen, you don't do what I did on the live chat last night, which was share my home screen with like a pay stub on there and everything. And I was like, oops, click out of it.
So I click on share screen at the bottom, and then what else?
And then you could share like a specific application. So if you want to choose like your CAD program or whatever. But in the meantime, this was a good question from Andrew Vale. How strong are the bearings? Because on his Santa Cruz, every single race, the pivot bearings would explode.
Yeah, so that's a big thing that I definitely wanted to. The thing that impressed me the most with the Squeeb right in the beginning was how big all of the hardware was. So I would break pivot bolts all the time, and it was super frustrating. And it got to the point where I was just over it. And when I started with Reeb, I was super impressed with all the pivot bolts. Everything was oversized. All the bearings were oversized.
Big balls.
It all comes together when you have strong hardware because you're not getting flex out of the bolt. And then the bearing press fit tolerance is very important because if you're pressing in a bearing too tight, it's going to shrink the outer diameter of the race, and then the bearings are going to wear prematurely. But really, it's all about flex and the pivot bolts. So if you can create the strongest interface between that pivot and the bearings are going to last much longer.
So also, Andrew, on the short link bikes like your Santa Cruz was, those bearings are experiencing significantly higher stresses than the design we're working with. We really, any horse link bike has a significantly reduced chance of premature bearing failure just because of the actual way that the bearings are loaded. On those short link bikes, really they should be bushings, but nobody likes bushings, and they have like a higher static friction and all that fun stuff. But on a horse link bike, you can get away with using bearings and actually loading within safety factor ranges and all that fun stuff. So your Santa Cruz is going to blow up bearings, right? Guaranteed. Eventually you'll blow up bearings on a Squeeb if you're riding it in the mud, if you're riding it hard. But we have manufactured this bike so that you can service it, so you can knock those bearings out, so you can pop new ones in. We got the part numbers. It's a real straightforward thing to do.
Yeah, and my experiences too, like a lot of times bearing issues are also tolerance issues. So that was one of the cool things about going to the V3 of the Squeeb, when all those bearing, when all the pivot points are machined into one solid piece, the tolerances are a lot tighter than some other frames I've ridden in the past. So sometimes you have bearing issues because of flex. Sometimes it could be hardware, and other times it could just be tolerances are off because it's a mass-produced frame. And when you're making 10,000 frames versus a few hundred, and it's not getting the attention to detail, then you're going to have those issues as well.
That was actually, so Jeff, that was actually one of the, like, when I started talking to Adam, we had a bunch of goals. One of my goals was, coming from a kind of a bearing background, the bearings actually need to face each other, right? You know, you got here. How can I do this? You got bearings. If they're like this and you're rotating them around, they're going to wear out real fast. If they're actually like squared up to each other, and
they usually work pretty good.
That dramatically improves bearing life, static friction, moving friction. You don't get these weird spots. Like, if you took a lot of bikes and took the shock off of them and cycled the rear suspension through the travel, you would feel tight spots and loose spots, and that's like real bad, right? You're wearing those bearings out in that particular region every time you cycle through the travel. The goal with what we tried to build was to have those bearings that control the suspension movement actually all really squared up and facing each other, so that not only were they like super silky smooth the first time, but they stayed that way. And when they do wear out, because you ride it in the UK winter or something, you can still pop the bearings out and put new ones in, and they're still squared up. So that's a huge, a huge design element that is overlooked frequently, I think.
And I think the thing that the average rider doesn't take into consideration is if you're wearing bearings out that often, you're probably putting a lot of extra stress on your rear shock. And bearings are only a couple bucks, so that's no big deal. But you start wearing out a rear shock, then you're talking hundreds of dollars. So you could just keep going, and there's all kinds of layers to that onion of bad tolerances.
Yeah, right, and that's why on the V3, that's why we decided to go to having all the suspension components, including the shock, including the upper, lower pivots, into machine pieces that are really like geometrically controlled as you assemble them, so that they are true and straight and will function, period, right, for a long time.
Yeah. So there's another question pretty early on. So regarding the bottom bracket cluster, or clamshell as he calls it, how do you justify machining that from billet as opposed to getting it forged and post machining?
Have you ever quoted a forged piece?
Exactly.
And so the quantities required.
We are a small company, and we know that we're a small company. We would love to manufacture thousands of Squeebs a year, but in reality, having a part forged, especially in 7005, not only takes all of that work overseas, but having engineers over there, having consulting over there, it really adds a lot. And when we order, say, 1,000 of those shells, that means we can't change the design after 1,000 bikes. And we never want to be locked into one design, because we know that the mountain bike industry evolves. And every year or two, we want to be able to make moves on whatever the industry wants to do next. So we like to keep manufacturing in-house. We like to machine the parts ourselves. So yeah, maybe someday, but right now we're going to keep doing everything in-house like we are, so we can, be quick on our toes.
And there's not like, from a quality standpoint, there's not anything to be gained from doing a near net forging and post machining process. The volumes that you would be talking about are in the thousands. Reeb's not in the thousands. We're still focused on really meeting consumer demands at a lower volume than that. Would love it to be the thousands. Please give us an excuse to design some near net forgings and then post machine them. But there's no reason to do it. We can buy the billet. We can buy. We can do all the machining work. It is way more flexible right now to not do a forging. And there's no structural benefit. If we were a Formula One team, sure, but we're not yet.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess this question I just posted is a little redundant, but yeah, just go over the quick process of how we make that bottom bracket seat stay cluster.
Okay, so
you drink a beer, and then.
So first off, the bottom bracket cluster is welded together first. So it's in two halves. It locates on dowel pins.
Oh, it's machined first.
Machined first.
It is
machined first.
Machined first.
It is machined first. Yep. And then it goes into a welding fixture to weld it together. And then we weld it to the seat tube. And once the seat tube is welded to the bottom bracket cluster, we face the bottom bracket. The bottom bracket shell faces, because since it is two halves being welded together, the faces of the bottom bracket shell are no longer going to be parallel after the center is welded. So we face after the seat tube is welded to the bottom bracket cluster. And then when the front triangle is welded, it goes into the frame fixture. The top tube, down tube, and head tube are welded on to that assembly. And then after heat treat, so after we weld the bike, we put it in the oven overnight and it heat treats the frame, or it ages the frame.
Yeah,
and
so we did have a question about how we heat treat our frames. So it's good that you're touching on that.
Yeah, so real quickly, we use 7005 series aluminum, which is an age hardening aluminum. So a lot of bikes like Giant and other large aluminum bike manufacturers do not heat treat their bikes at all, their 7005 bikes, because it takes about a month for the bike to return to full hardness after welding. So they put a bike in a box into a container, and by the time it gets to the US, it is hard. So we like to turn out bikes fairly quick. We have a pretty good lead time a pretty short lead time on a fully custom manufactured aluminum frame. And we can heat treat the bike overnight, which is called artificially aging, and it reaches that full hardness. So when we take it out of the oven, we will ream the seat tube, and then we will powder coat the bike. And then after powder coating, it'll go back into the post-weld machining fixture, and the bottom bracket will be faced to size. The main pivot bore is machined. The rocker pivot bore is machined, and both lower shock mounts are machined, all in one operation. So all of those mounts are machined in one plane, in one setup. So we are reducing all of the tolerance problems with any sort of weld movement with machining it right before the bike is assembled.
Nice.
So we get fully hard, and then we make everything square.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. This is going downhill fast. Drop off a 6-pack at the engineer's house.
I'm only on number 2. Although I do have, also somebody made me a Manhattan.
Somebody.
So you got 2 drinks.
I wonder who that
was. James Stokoi says he's can't say enough about his V3. 170 in the front and overstroke to 140 in the rear. She's bad girl. That's actually, I want to talk about that. You can run a long stroke. You could run a 185 by 55 rear shock and have a 140 bike. You can do whatever.
Yeah. So it turns out rear shock manufacturers, nearly all of them just make one length rear shock and internally reduce it to whatever stroke you need. So like coil shocks, most of the time it's an external spacer below the bottom out bumper. So it's like the manufacturers know that there's going to be all kinds of different stroke lengths. So if you do want to run a 140 travel squeeb, you can just run it 185 by 55, and then you get 140 millimeters of travel in the rear in the short travel setup. So these are the kinds of things that if you guys have questions and, you know, want to talk about, you know, we call it like going down the wormhole, like there's a lot of different suspension setups that are doable and also suspension setups that are not doable. So, you know, we always want to check for interference problems and, you know, going over specific setups because you can't just go out and throw a 70 millimeter stroke shock on there. And
no, so we know that in the current frame configuration, you're pretty much topped out at a, I would say 60 millimeter stroke shock.
How much?
60.
Okay.
Depending on tire size.
Meanwhile,
if you're on
like
27.5 though, you can go a 205 65 shock, and you've got a almost 160 mil travel rear end. But
my question is, would Adam rather run a road bike rear tire and do like a 80 millimeter stroke or a big fat tire and 60 millimeter stroke?
I've been trying to convince Adam to build a 440 chainstay bike, like a longer chainstay, and then we could run a 65 stroke shock. And, there's a lot of options out there.
Yeah, that's the big thing with, small manufacturers and, people like us, we can, Look
at that. We just got a $50 donation.
Oh, nice.
Shut Up and Ride. He was riding a Ridiculous 2 or the Ridiculous 2. Yeah. It's pretty sick. Awesome. And I probably should text him back about getting on his podcast because I keep
dude.
He wanted to do it tonight at 8:00, and at least he knows I wasn't lying and trying to get out of his podcast because he's watching us live right now.
That $50, huh?
Let me hide that.
But for real, so yeah, right now we're limited shock stroke wise, just because we pretty much know what chainstay length feels good to us, right? We want a playful bike. It's not super long. It's not like super modern Euro 450 mil chainstays. We could go to longer chainstays, get more travel in the rear, but it's a real diminishing return. I mean, you get 15 mil more travel. You lose the feel. Where does it go? But I mean, yeah, it's also like you talk to Adam and say, this is what I want. And then that's totally possible. It's every time we take a custom order, it diminishes our efficiencies, but also we want to build cool bikes. That's kind of why we're here. So,
right. So I have a question for you guys, and this is probably like you guys are the suspension nerds. No offense. And this is like maybe a regular guy question. So I saw a video today from DVO, and for their JDEX, they have a bunch of different collars now that you could add to reduce the travel.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So I'm guessing you would run the longer version, which would be like a 150, and maybe reduce it down to a 140 or 145 or whatever, depending on the different collars that you choose. But how does that affect the suspension performance? Because like when I ride the Squeeb in a 130 version, it's a smaller, tighter suspension window than a 150. Like it has less sag and stuff like that. So how would those collars affect a Reeb or any other bike?
Adam, you want me to go?
Yeah, go for it. I'm gonna bring something that I might be able to create some reference.
Yeah, like I guess my question is I choose a spring that is 25-30% sag, but if I limit the travel, then could be 35% sag in one configuration versus.
So, I mean, the process there would be to identify what travel you want to run, right? Let's say you want a 150 bike. You're going to have to use a big shock, a 205 trunnion shock, 60 millimeter stroke to get there. And then you size your spring for the amount of sag you want to run. Also, though, we like the 2-position shock mount that comes stock on a Squeeb with the, so on mine, I run a coil shock, 205 60 stroke. It's set in the most progressive setting because it's a coil shock. I can move it to the less progressive setting, and I move my sag from about 35% to about 25%. So you got to identify what you want first. Do you want a big bike? Do you want a small bike? Do you want something that's like real snappy, poppy? Do you want something that is just full on Colorado plow? They will both feel the same about ish while you're pedaling. It's really when you get into the deep stuff that you can notice the difference. And like your 130 bike, Jeff, it has more feel at the bottom. So when you're hitting your big things, you're getting more force. When you're pushing into it, you're popping off of stuff harder. The bigger bike just kind of plows over it more, right? And so yeah, you get the big bike, you get the small bike. You got to choose, and then you set it up about 30%. I would recommend that people really decide what they want shock wise, and then we have to talk. That's the thing. Like, what do you want to ride? How do you want it to feel? Do you want it to be a plow bike? Do you want it to be a poppy bike? We can achieve all those things. Damn.
So if somebody was to buy that shock and to use that, to use a different collars and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, right. So that collar
probably like 2 millimeters or 2.5 millimeters, something like that, you can compensate for with preload. But if you went to like a 7.5 millimeter collar where you're substantially reducing your travel, you're probably gonna have to change your spring.
You'll probably have to change your spring rate because you'll need a different amount of sag, right? I mean, 30% sag on a 150 bike is different than 30% sag on a 130 bike.
Gotcha.
And,
yeah.
The way we've designed this thing, if you want a snappy bike, run it in a short travel setting and run 30% sag at that short travel setting. That's way different. That's a different spring rate than running 30% sag at a 150 or 160 setting, right?
Right.
So yeah, you're going to need a different spring. You're going to need to actually do the maths. We can help you with that. That's like, besides drinking beer and going down Porcupine Rim at night, the only other thing I'm good at is math. So I'm happy to help with that. Why would you want less than 150 travel? Because you could just make your shock harder, then it would feel the same with a bike with less travel. Yeah, that's a real legit question, actually. So at some point, it's actually not the same. You want to actually set your bike up to deal with the terrain that is local to you, right? So I mean, honestly, so my Squeeb is set up 140 rear, 160 front, and that's a air shock on the rear for 140, 160 lyric on the front. And it's like my happy medium between the full-on enduro plow and something that's pedalable. The 130 setup legitimately sets the bike up higher in the back and lower in the front, sets it up more like a trail bike, and you are not like the anti-squat. The pedaling efficiency that you get is better because it's higher in the back and lower in the front, and you're in a more traily position. So there are really different feels that you can get from this bike depending on whether you set it up as a big travel bike, as a small travel bike, right? I mean, even the 130 bike though. So, I mean, very few people probably on this live feed know what the Hall Ranch Rock Garden is, but that is the litmus test for what these bikes can do or cannot do. And even on the 130 bike, I do not feel held back going down an extremely rocky, extremely fast and tight technical descent because it has the right amount of progression and it sits the bike at the right ride height for each of those travel settings. So
yeah, so Andrew's been on live chats before and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure he's like a NICA racer. It's a great question. I think if you were going to do that though, like if you were going to try to have a, if you had a bike that was set at 150 and you did want to try to make it poppier, you'd be better to do that with a coil shock than an air shock, because the air shock's gonna have a bigger can and you still are gonna have the larger volume issue and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, or set it up 130. This thing rails.
Right, totally. Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, if you only had one bike and it was 150 and you wanted to make it poppier, you're better to try to do that with a spring than an air shock, because the air shock's still gonna have a much larger volume can and it's going to ramp up a lot less. You're not going to get the progressivity. Right?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's true.
Like, I mean, Adam likes running a super hard rear shock.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Adam also does really, really ill-advised things with his bicycle.
Awesome.
Sorry, I was a bit distracted. Our cat just got a bird and weird.
So yeah. These are the major manufacturing problems that Reeb experiences, is that Adam's cat gets a bird or his dog runs out and chases a car.
Right. Exactly.
No, legitimately, that's a really good question. And the long travel, short travel thing is something that I've played with a lot. I've got short travel shocks. I've got long travel shocks. I've got a King Creek double barrel in the long travel setup, and that is by far my favorite. I've got a DVO air shock short travel setup, and it feels almost it really feels almost the same until you get real gnarly, like really, really gnarly. But the short travel definitely pedals better. Like it's all about that monkey motion of the suspension and what the axle path is and how much of percentage brake job. Okay, yeah.
So Keith is always on all my live chats, always like super interactive. Adam might have actually heard of this because he's from Iowa. In Southwest Indiana, there's Griffin Bike Park.
That is a completely different state.
I know, but it's still Midwest. I mean, it's still flat in Midwest. So
the percentage of brake jack is about 4 beers. Slow-mo, we don't have that, but cool. And it goes to full squat if you go big enough.
Yep. We probably do have some good bottom out shots.
If we need some bottom out shots, I'm sure we can get those from Adam.
So I can't talk about the percentage of brake jack, right? So brake jack, super misunderstood. Motorcycle industry has gone back and forth. Fuck yeah, dude.
We're gonna do wizard sticks.
Oh man.
Brake jack.
Have either one of you guys ever done
super misunderstood? It's especially super misunderstood in the mountain bike community. It's a little bit less misunderstood in the motorcycle world. It's still misunderstood in the motorcycle world. But brake jack is a mixed blessing. You get enough of, and it's really called anti-rise. You get enough of it, and your bike feels settled when you're hitting the brakes. You get too much of it, and your bike feels super harsh when you're going down steep stuff on the brakes. And there's a balance between this it feels settled on the brakes and it feels harsh on the brakes. The Squeeb is actually, and you probably think I'm biased, but I'm kind of not. Like, these guys paid me in bike parts, so I'm legitimately not biased. The Squeeb is really, really good on the anti-squat or brake jack front, in that it has enough forces when you hit the brakes that lower, like, compress the rear suspension, lower it into a travel, sink it in, get you settled, but not enough that it prevents the rear suspension from moving. So on super duper steep stuff, your brakes work, your rear suspension works. It doesn't feel overly active on the rear, and it doesn't jump up in the rear when you hit the brakes. In fact, it does settle when you hit the rear, but it settles just enough. That's a super subjective way to explain it. I wish that I could give you numbers right now. I am 2 stupid beers in, but it feels good. Slam on the rear brakes, it hooks up. Yeah, and it's not too much brake jack. One of the problems with those fancy new high pivot bikes, they got a shitload of brake jack, right? They are loading that rear shock in a massive way with the braking forces, and that doesn't allow the rear shock to respond to the bump forces because it's already loaded with the braking forces. Squeeb doesn't.
Somebody had a question about when is Reeb going to do a high pivot bike? At this time,
Hey, yeah, when they pay us to do it, hell yeah, we'll do it.
Right.
Yeah.
But
I would actually love to do a high pivot bike. I would love to do one.
I'd love to ride one.
Bring it on. It's going to be like 15K. And I'll do one.
So remember I said I thought I recognized Andrew's name because he's a Nike racer? This comment completely sums it up. Read this, guys. I run max pressure front and rear on my SB6, and it's great because the pedals well for XC, Nike racing, and it works very well for big roof drops. That's what I like to see. Good job, Andrew. That's awesome. Big roof drops and stair drops. The only time he runs it for enduro races. So that is exactly what I started out doing when I was a kid, just riding my bike off shit. So that is awesome.
Yeah, and so Jeff was saying earlier.
We approve that. We approve that comment, Andrew. 100%. Hucking off stuff.
So Jeff was saying earlier that I like to run my rear shock oversprung. So I should be running a 550-pound coil, but I run a 600-pound coil. And it's pretty much because of that statement right there. So since I'm racing, I like it to be stiff, but I want it to take up everything that I throw at it. Steven,
so I'm gonna post up an awesome question that I get all the time, and I want to know your thoughts on this. Because working for Reeb is unlike anything I've ever experienced. Like, if I don't like a bike, I pick up the phone and I call you and I go, Adam, hey, let's change this. And you're like, we probably argue a little bit, and you tell me I'm a boomer, but then you're like, all right, and we do it. So
trying to tell me the bike is long.
Yeah, like in the past, like I've ridden for other bike brands, and like some bikes are good and some bikes aren't, but I never really had any input. But like when people ask me, all right, what do you really think of a Reeb? I'm like, I love it, because if I didn't love it, like it's exactly what I want. Like, you'll literally make me anything I want. And the hardtail was a completely custom bike, and then we made it a production bike. And the Squeeb, like the second I got on, it was like the most comfortable bike I've ever ridden, and that's no bullshit. So it's like, if I didn't like it, I'd just call you up and we'd change it. And if you didn't like it, we'd change it. So it's so cool, like working with guys who actually ride, and we're small enough to just make it exactly what we want. So is there anything that you would change if you could? Because for me, honestly, like both of my hardtail and my suspension bike, I'm pretty psyched on it.
You got 5 minutes?
Sure.
Okay. Yes, there is room for improvement. There is always room for improvement. The interesting thing that we're constantly working with at Reeb is it's a handful of people, right? We don't have a huge manufacturing base. We don't really our manufacturing base is not something we communicate with through Taiwan or whatever. It's like a couple of us drunk fuckers trying to figure out how to make a thing better. So yeah, there's a billion things that we can make better. what we're limited by is, what's cost effective, what meets the market's needs, what efforts can we put in that will actually be, financially worthwhile. From a how do we make the bike better perspective, Adam and I have discussed a billion things, right? There's also a real subjective better. What's better, right?
Right.
Is it a better bike for Adam to race enduros on? Is it a better bike for my fucking weekend warrior ass to do manuals on? I don't know what's better. So there are better. We have identified some things that we can improve on that will take some time. Materials wise, I think Cole Trickle says, what materials? Pivot hardware, stainless steel, aluminum, titanium. Right now, it's stainless steel and titanium. Depends on what pivots you're talking about. Continuous improvement on bar napkins. It's more like continuous improvements in the bar. But yeah, we have identified obviously ways we can get this bike better. It's going to be a continual iterative process. There's no V4 is not going to drop and it's not going to be immensely better. It's already a really, really good bike. I mean, if you look at horse-link bikes, the only one that is actually analogous to the way that our kinematics work right now is the most modern specialized enduro. We have an extraordinarily controlled and linear rate of progression on our coil shock setups, and we have absolutely the right axle path for a horse-link bike. It pedals like a motherfucker. It goes down chunky stuff like a motherfucker. So yeah, we have understood also what we're doing good, and we can do a lot to make things better, right? Better bearings, better understanding of how the assembly process works. So there's a ton of better. We're a resource constrained company though, right? I mean, we can only do so much every iteration, and we're very motivated to make each of these iterations make a big difference in how the bike rides. It already rides better. I mean, if you guys are listening and you haven't actually ridden one of these in anger on some gnarly shit, you're probably not going to understand, but it's like a legitimately really good bike. Adam rides at a level that most people do never attain, and I ride at a level that most people can, but I'm also super sensitive to how bikes feel, and this bike is legitimately really, really good. So we know what we're working with. We're trying to evolve it in a way that doesn't detract from where it is already, because it's already super duper good, and we're going to make it better. We're going to make it stiffer. Yeah, we're small, we're agile, dual row bearings, both bearings, but there's a billion things we can do.
Yeah, and so I guess my take on that, the bike is awesome, and I've been riding it since it was the beginning, pretty much. I mean, I didn't ride the first iterations of the bike, but I rode the first production version of the bike, and from then until now, we have improved it tenfold, and now we are getting into the improvements that are industry related. So we're looking at new derailleur hanger standards. We are designing a new dropout that uses the SRAM UDH setup, which is supposedly the universal derailleur hanger. It's a $15 retail derailleur hanger that is already used on big manufacturers' bikes. So my big improvement is getting rid of synthase, because synthase is a German part that is hard to get. So say you go out to Moab, Utah and ride your squeeb and break a derailleur hanger. Well, maybe none of the shops in town have a synthase derailleur hanger. But what SRAM is hopefully doing is creating a derailleur hanger that is being used on Treks, on Specialized, on whoever else, fill in the blank. So we'll be able to have that easy, cheap derailleur hanger option. So that's my biggest improvement that I'm working on the bike for this year. It's going to be put into action soon, very soon, probably next batch of bikes. So that's one thing that I really love is if we know that something's going to be better and we trust it and we can believe in it, that we don't have to wait until a model year to make it happen. We can just put it into action, but still be backwards compatible with any sort of support. So that's my big improvement is we always want to make sure that we're following the industry trends, because unfortunately every year a new part comes out and it makes bikes obsolete. So we got to make sure we stay on top of that, and we make sure we can run trunnion mount shocks or eyelet shocks. That's another thing that we didn't really say about the wormhole, is that you can run eyelet shocks also. So if you want to split the difference between imperial and metric, that's a thing, but trunnion mount is good. And
our wormhole is too deep to be marketable.
Exactly.
And that is a real statement. Like, we can't, we've struggled with how to communicate the adjustability of the current frame that we have. And it's hugely adjustable. You could do stupid stuff with it. If you're a bike manufacturer trying to sell bikes, you got to distill it down to a couple of options, and that's where you see it on the website. But the reality is that there's actually a lot of options out there. Also, to address Jason McConnell's V2 to V3 long travel feel much different. No, they're not going to feel a huge amount different. There's a little bit of difference in progressivity and the initial shock stroke.
The travel won't feel much different, but the frame construction, the frame construction, the geometry is completely different. So it is a much stiffer frame. The geometry is much more refined. And for one, I would say the biggest improvement, aside from the bottom bracket cluster being all one piece, is the head tube. We beefed up the head tube like crazy. We went and found the thickest tapered head tube that we could buy, and it was the same thickness as like a cyclocross or like road bike head tube. So we had it custom manufactured to be twice as thick. So any headset problems, we went from a 44 millimeter lower cup to a 56 millimeter lower cup, and then we increased wall thickness by a good amount. So the biggest problem with these long travel bikes these days is headsets. So on the V2, I admit the head tube.
The biggest problem for Adam Pro Size is headsets.
Well, I run a 180 fork, so I'm going to find all the problems. And I had some prototype frames that were as low as 62.5 degree head tube angles. So I'm going to find all of the failure modes in headsets and headset cups. So the new head tube is by far one of the best improvements that we've done for the front end of the bike. And then going towards the back end of the bike is going to be all of the new suspension kinematic improvements and the machine cluster stiffness wise.
Hold on.
Old Chubb these days.
Oh wait, hold
on. I don't have an old Chubb. I'm not going to shotgun a fucking double IPA can of bliss.
Yeah, we're pretty much we only have high alcohol beers.
I'm pretty drunk.
What's up, Jeff?
I was trying to hold on. I'll figure out how to do this. We had a special guest appearance that I was gonna bring on to the show.
62 degrees. No. No.
I think I got it.
Yeah, technical questions, please.
Yeah, Mike. When does Young Chubb drop? What is that? Like a low alcohol old Chubb? That's bullshit.
Bullshit.
Why isn't it working? Oh, it's so annoying. All right, never mind.
Ask us some questions about where we are, because we will go forward from here, and I think we would all love to talk about where that's going.
Yes. So let's open this up to some questions.
So I've got one question here. How much does the build affect the squeeb experience? Does NX versus XTR make that much of a difference? Or is the frame and end all whatever build you can get? So
it depends how much you drink before you go for a bike ride.
So the big difference is what you're looking to get out of your ride. Steph, my girlfriend, her squeeb is built up with XTR, and XTR is a great build kit. Jeff has his built up XTR. I actually really like Shimano drivetrains as a diehard SRAM guy, but it's all about price. So there's a good saying from one of my favorite.
Sure, we have Steve's twin on here.
Amazing. So from one of my favorite movies, Mad Max, there's a good quote from it. It's speed is just a question of money. How fast can you go? So everybody thinks they're faster with XTR, but they're just spending more money. Same thing with XX1. If you're just getting out and, having a good time on the trail, NX or GX is actually probably better to have, but
it doesn't matter. Oh, we're super good.
There's things that you can do to make both drivetrains better. Like you can run a XL1 cassette with a GX derailleur, or you can run an XT cassette with a SLX derailleur.
Semi Cindy just actually asked a question that is pertinent. Do you think there are any current trends in geometry that you guys just can't get behind? Any radical directions that you think hold exceptional merit? Are you semi? So,
Adam, you want to tell everybody mine?
Jeff thinks bikes are too long.
I have I don't. I have a fear of too long of bikes. So the Squeeb is honestly the most comfortable bike I've ever gotten on, except for the Ridiculous. Yeah. But the first version of the Ridiculous, the Squeeb was so comfortable that I had. Well, did you make my first Ridiculous, or did Chris? Chris made it.
Chris made it. But let's go back to the text message that I got when you actually got the bike, because you said, I can't front touch or bunny hop up ledges over 18 inches on my new 29-inch trail bike.
Wrong. That's wrong. I said that I could front touch higher than ever, but I can't bunny hop it very high.
Bunny hop. Right.
Couldn't bunny hop it because it's too high. So then Adam comes back at me and it was like, you just need to try harder. So then I'm like, all right, now I feel like a boomer because I totally respect Adam's riding. So I was like, shit, maybe I do just need to try harder. And then I kept trying harder and like, I just couldn't bunny hop the bike. And I'm like, well, it's kind of weird that this is my signature bike, but I can't bunny hop it.
Was it a length or?
I was like, I think this bike needs to be shorter. So but I thought it only needed to be 10 millimeters shorter. So I'm like, it's not a very substantial difference, but I really do believe in my heart that this should be 10 millimeters shorter.
Was it a bottom bracket height thing at all?
That was the interesting thing. So
like, I think the
original Ridiculous, the prototype that I got made, I just told Chris to copy the top tube, the reach, not the top tube, the reach. But since the bottom bracket's so much lower on a hardtail versus a suspension bike, the reach is effectively quite a bit longer. Yeah. So we needed to bring it back to like compensate for that. So now the new Ridiculous is like spot on. But Adam and I, which is the cool part about like working with such a small company, like we like battled it out like brothers, and then we like changed it, and it was sweet. And the new bike, like the production bike, is awesome. Yeah. But at first he's like busting my chops. He's like, you need to try harder. And then
there's a fall.
When Jeff says, I can't bunny hop this.
Right.
Like, are you having a bad day? what does that mean? Because it's like, I mean,
there's a false narrative on reach, on like buying a bike based on reach, because you have to take into account the seat tube angle and the effective seat tube angle and the bottom bracket drop, because that will change things drastically. So comparing the reach from a squeeb to a hardtail, the seat tube angle is much slacker on a hardtail. The bottom bracket drop is more.
If we publish the dynamic bottom bracket height of a squeeb, it's almost identical to the actual bottom bracket height
at sag. Yeah,
at sag.
I think it's a combination of things. Like I think on a suspension bike, like when you pull up on the bars, you're effectively shortening the bike. So it's a whole different balance. The new ridiculous, the way it is, like it's perfect. I love it. But it took us a couple versions to get there, because at first I was like, squeeb's perfect, make it the same length. And then I got on and I was like, this thing's way too long. Like I just can't bunny hop it, whatever. We needed to make it ended up on paper being shorter than a squeeb. But when you ride it, it still feels a hair longer, but it feels good. Like it feels really good.
I fully buy into that, Jeff. Like, the rear suspension being such a dynamic thing is absolutely hard to calculate, right? Like, yeah, where does a squeeb end up when you're riding it? It's completely dependent on how you set the rear end up.
But that's what's awesome. Like when somebody says, like, all right, no bullshit. Like, what do you think of the bike? It's like, well, if it sucked, it's because I picked the shitty design. Because like these guys will, like Adam and I will bounce ideas and we'll come to an agreement, and that's what we make. So if it sucks, it's on us. Like it's not like somebody's giving us a bike and they're like, say it's good. Like it's what we want. And if it sucks, I got nobody to blame but myself.
This is what this tiny little company is good at.
Yeah.
Actually doing that. Listening to that.
Yep.
Yeah, so just reading through the comments, and there's a lot of drivetrain comments coming through. So there's some good ones, but to finish off with the NX versus XTR, going from NX to XTR is going to be probably close to 2 pounds weight reduction, but if you hit a rock with the XTR derailleur, you're out like $400. So it all depends on what you're into and what you want to get done at the end of the day. If you want to, go out and try 360s on your trail bike and throw it down 100 times, you're probably going to want an NX derailleur.
And spend your money on wheels.
Yeah.
Not drivetrain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy how well everything performs nowadays. Like I often joke with the guys from Shimano, like maybe you shouldn't make SLX quite as good, because like honestly, if I closed my eyes, I couldn't tell a difference. And I'm a pro rider. Like that stuff works so well. Maybe 3 years down the road, XCR will be a pound lighter, and it'll hold the test of time over 3 years, or like riding every day, like it might last a little bit longer. But if you're riding your bike 3 times a week, 4 times a week, you're never gonna wear out that stuff. It works awesome.
If XCR gets a pound lighter, that shit's magic. I don't trust it.
All right, let's see what
already is scary.
This is a good one from Stephanie Smith. Stephanie Smith's checking in. Her squeeb is not heavier than her full carbon fiber turquoise bike. So that's pretty interesting. All right,
I'm 2.5 beers in. I'm going to go on a bit of a diatribe.
I was going to just go on a pre-diatribe.
You go for your pre-diatribe. I'm going to warm up.
So before I started working with Reeb, if you had asked me 2 years ago, how much does your trail bike weigh? I would have been like 29 pounds. Never weighed my bike ever. I always just thought, like, I just believed what everybody markets, that my extra large bike with pedals and a water bottle is the same weight as a size small with no pedals, and everybody says a trail bike is 29 pounds. So if you asked me 2 years ago, like, what is your extra large full carbon fiber bike weigh, I would have said 29 pounds. When I was talking to Reeb, I knew I was switching to aluminum bike. I was curious, like, what my bike weighed, because I knew the aluminum bike might weigh a little bit more. So I weighed the bike that I had been riding, and I was completely happy with, and never would have ever questioned that it was too heavy. And it was 32.75 pounds. And I got my first Reeb and I built it up, and it was like 33.5. And when I think of the failure rate of my last bike, I was like, I'll gladly take half pound, 3/4 pound. Like, that's no problem. And that's on an extra large. And I was also going from a 27.5 to a 29. So you have to account for tires and wheels because they're just bigger. So I don't know. I've never once like thought my bike was too heavy, but I was totally drinking the marketing Kool-Aid that every trail bike is under 30 pounds. And in reality, they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, in reality, they're not. If you build an aluminum bike at 30 pounds with the same component group that we would, trust for reliability and all that.
No, I think if you build, I mean, I don't know of any bikes that, like, other than a size medium, like,
no,
it's like a unicorn.
It is a unicorn. And we've gotten to the point where, like, really bikes that are engineered to pedal well and do the whole absorbing of bumps things well, they have other demands than the strict demands that were placed on cross-country race bikes back in the day when we were building 22-pound race bikes, right? Like, it's better to have a bike that is just absolutely performing how you want it to do while you're pedaling, while you're descending, while you're doing whatever it is, than it is to worry about a pound or two. And so aluminum bikes are heavier. That's correct. Aluminum bikes are also more durable if you, like, put them through the cycle count, whatever testing you want to put them through. When you build a burly ass aluminum bike, it is going to perform every day, every single day, no matter, how bad your alcohol addiction is and how bad you treat your bike. It's going to be just fine, right? And
so the big thing is, like, we want to build bikes that are durable and that just, take a beating. We want to go down to Mexico, like fly down to Mexico and ride some local Mexico trails, and you get shuttles from, random pickups that don't have pickup pads, and
they're not nice to your bikes.
You don't think for a second about throwing a bike on a tailgate. And, there's bike companies that void warranties, carbon bike companies that void warranties because of tailgates. And it just doesn't make any sense. Like, we want to build a bike that you can go out and do whatever you want with it. Like, we want our bikes to be close to other bikes, be friends with other bike frames and brake levers, and, like, not worry about scratches and, little nicks. It just, the carbon thing just doesn't make sense to me. We've been dealing with
Carbon's cool. Carbon's cool, right? There's a bunch of cool things that you can do with carbon, but
Steve works for a carbon fiber company.
I don't. Actually I do. Carbon is cool. Aluminum is cool too. All of the, like, if you actually want a bike though, that is like, I want a bike that I don't fucking have to worry about at all. I want to do really stupid stuff with it. Mainly my MO for my life is, like, let's do the stupid stuff and hope that it works for the best. And sometimes you want a bike that's totally fucking going to be there all the time.
So I want I want
That's
to
what we
throw
bought.
something up on the screen. I don't know if it'll, hopefully it'll work. So Cole Trickle, who has been a regular commenter here, he, oh wait, here we go. I met Cole out in California at TDS Enduro. Can you guys see that?
Cole Trickle sounds like a NASCAR driver.
It
Cole
is.
Trickle is like
It is a NASCAR driver, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you guys see that
No.
I
thumbnail?
think he's the son of Dick Trickle.
You guys can't see that?
I don't know. I added it, but do something. I can see your mouse.
Can you see that video?
No.
Oh.
Oh, there.
I see something. I see something. There's hope.
No?
I hear audio.
Let's try this again.
Look, carbon fiber is, while Adam is trying to figure this out, carbon fiber is
it out.
absolutely cool. There's a billion things you can do with it. From a manufacturing perspective, though, and a repeatability perspective, you know, you need to build more than the number of bikes that Reeb builds. And for the number of bikes that Reeb builds and the amount of flexibility that we want to extend to all of you in terms of like, yeah, I want my bike to be like this, be like that, whatever. Carbon fiber is like, it's out right now, you know? Yeah, sure, scale it. You know, maybe it grows to being composite rockers or something like that. But for now, it is not financially practical for us to build that stuff. That doesn't mean that there's any performance deficit. We like the things that we design are absolutely built and analyzed to the point that we understand where the stresses lie, how we can mitigate any failures. Like this bike rolls no matter how hard you ride it. I mean, if Adam is riding this bike and if Jeff is riding this bike, it's
Jeff weighs more than I do.
I wasn't trying to incite that kind of competition, but I'm just saying it's a pretty strong bike, all right. And realistically, we could spend a ton of time, you know, making it lighter, making it harder, making it faster, making it whatever. I think and from my perspective, I would like to spend the time making the bike more consistent, predictable, affordable, easier to manufacture. It's a really good bike. It's a really, really good bike. I'm, you know.
Oh,
Murph
has a good idea right here. Bamboo.
I've made bamboo bikes.
I want my goddamn free coffee. Where the fuck is it? I don't believe that Adam
made a bamboo bike. If you could weld bamboo, I'd believe him. But
Action coffee on my doorstep, bitch. I will give you a bamboo bike.
So, can you see that photo? Does my screen sharing actually work?
Yeah.
There you go.
You're jumping a big dumb train gap up in fucking BC, man.
Yeah. So
it's a super big gap.
A lot of people have asked me, like, did I question doing that on a bike that I built? Yeah. Absolutely not.
Good question.
Because
I
built the bike to do that.
I question whether or not I tighten my stem every time. I'm like, damn it, did you tighten it?
Yeah.
I would,
dude. When I saw the photo of you or the video of you doing that, and then you were making my bike, I was like, no problem. This is handled.
No problem.
I'm not even remotely worried.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, right. The Squeeb is a downhill bike in a lot of ways.
Be right back.
Adam's got to pee. Jeff, literally, like the tube set that, like it is one of the strongest bikes you can ride.
I mean, I could take
Yeah.
space.
Oh, hey.
yeah.
That's
Hey,
way better than Adam.
I
Listen,
think I'm
we
the
don't need
only
Adam back.
female in this entire.
so here's a legitimate question, and I know that we built the strongest bike we can build, and now you have ridden it as a trail bike, and you've come off of a Yeti.
A turquoise bike. We don't say brand names. We don't want to be.
I apologize.
There's one 6
You
inches
have come off
right now.
of a modern carbon fiber bike that has modern suspension kinematics, modern fit, modern geometry, and you have experienced a positive thing moving to this bike, I guess. God damn,
I love my Squeen. I will never go back to any other bike unless I have to. Day I got on it, it was
made that feel coerced.
no day I got on it, I was like, oh, this bike feels like it is my bike. It feels like it wants to do everything I want it to do.
Yeah, Steph was definitely a big part of the V3 redesign also, because on the V2, Steph number one wouldn't have fit.
You're like, this is causing major relationship problems. The seat post won't go far enough. We need to redesign this whole entire bike.
Well, we want to be able to actually have a size small that fits, typical size small people.
Right.
And the biggest problem with size small people is they have to run a 100 millimeter drop seat post, which is not much. And so we wanted to do everything that we could to make more seat post insertion. And the big thing was moving the rocker pivot out of the seat tube. And so there wasn't interference, and then making that machined cluster so we could actually push a seat post down further into the frame. So on the current Squeed, Steph could run a 170 dropper, but
wow,
holy shit, you could run a 170
if the tire didn't hit the seat.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't. Wow.
Yeah, we're
That's
back
rad.
into downhill bike problems where
Yep.
Steph's seat goes so low.
Yeah.
At
yeah.
130 millimeters of travel, the tire touches the seat. So
Andrew, get one. What are you waiting for? Get one.
hit me up, Andrew.
The whole design iteration where we started with this discussion of we need a longer dropper post insertion has gone so far. I mean, the kinematics are better, right? We improved the anti-squat at SAG for short travel and long travel. It's basically the short travel one is a super peppy bike, and the long travel one's like a pretty peppy bike for a long travel bike. But all of it started with this, how do you fit a dropper post that's modern? And it's great. It's great. You can fit a long ass dropper post. I can fit. I could run a 200 one-up post on my bike, no problem. 200. I'm like five.
Steve is like
5'7".
Yeah.
Like 5'7" if I'm drunk enough. I'm like 5'6" if I'm like.
So do you ride Steph's bike?
Steve?
No, she won't let me ride her bike.
I know, it's a joke. It's like, was that what you were riding for a test bike? He was riding Steph's?
Steph's bike is tiny.
I know, but Steve's tiny.
Yeah.
No, I ride a medium, and I ride it with a long stem, and I like a big bike.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. I think we should wrap this thing up. We've been at an hour and a half, and since we're not doing the weekly Reeb romps, there's no reason we can't do these on Thursday nights. So I don't know. What do you guys think? You got anything else you want to talk about, or should we just sign off? And
I'm trying to see if there's any other good questions. We've got a strong showing of Rude Boys and Reeb Crew in the comments. That's good. Some Lucas is saying I'd rather have an aluminum or steel bike that you guys fabbed than a carbon bike from Taiwan. Thank you, Lucas. We do too.
Yeah.
Uh,
What kind of business model?
I don't see too many others.
I mean, like if we need to do weekly tech things, the Squeeb's exquisitely good from a kinematics, whatever the fuck you want to do perspective. And I would love, since you have a longer travel on the front, do you guys run higher in your front tire and lower pressure in the rear?
This is a good one.
No, run your tire pressure. Okay. Let's get into this real deep, right? So, what do you like?
Yeah.
You want travel that suits your particular environment, whatever it is, right? 130 in the rear, 150 in the front is a pretty good average. Like, we're going to go ride trails, going to hit it real hard. Get that. Okay. I'm not even going to talk about tire pressure because that's up to you. But yeah, you want to go trail riding, you tell us your terrain. We've ridden it. I mean, between Adam and I, we've goddamn ridden everything. Between Jeff and Adam and I, we've ridden it like seriously probably every place in the goddamn world. So excuse my yes, please, thank you. I've also
Just got awards in the background.
Michael? I got what?
You got awards in the background, so I feel like you have awards.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Bobby Turner, stop asking questions. That's really what I'm getting at. That's a dumb question.
So, yeah,
you run a higher pressure in the rear tire. Bobby, I know where you live.
Bobby's avatar is the first ever Squeeb.
Oh, nice.
I know. I see his avatar.
Yeah,
he's evidently got. Yeah.
We were Scooby tubes.
Higher pressure in your front tire. That's the secret for making the Squeeb work. Is running 32 psi in the front and 23 in the back.
Yeah. What's this?
Well, I don't know. Oh shit! You got one of those?
Nice.
God damn it!
Oh dang!
I just have
for
this.
Everybody that
I just have this. This is
not able to get your hands on Reeb Ride.
I am likely sleeping at work tonight because of this. So
probably
the cleaning crew is currently here, and they were just giving me the eye. But since you guys have longer travel on the front, do you fall off the back? Yes, mostly.
Not if you ride something steep enough.
So here's the trick with that longer travel. So Jason, who is the Genji, he's antagonizing us, but
clearly.
So long travel in the front doesn't necessarily mean that you always have, for my instance, 180 millimeters of travel sticking out of the fork while you're pedaling along. So
yeah, but how do you do front wheel hops?
You only do those.
I have an honest question. So I have a new video coming out tomorrow, and one of the things I gave tips on is a nollie. Do you think with all that negative, of course, you're superhuman strength, so I know you probably could, but do you think you could nollie with all that like negative travel? Because you kind of got to like get the wheel off the ground a little bit.
Yeah,
but there's like so much.
Yeah, so I run a 180 fork with 3 tokens. So I run a 180 RockShox Lyric with 3 tokens and almost 20 psi less than the chart says. So what that gives me is it's pretty much 160 millimeters of ride height, but I get a lot of negative travel. So I have a lot of traction on the ground when I'm going over all the small bump. So I'm actually sagged into a good portion of that fork, and I'm not actually sitting at 180. But when I'm in the air and when I'm nose casing a big double, lifesaver.
So you see this look that I've had on my face for the last few minutes?
I think we need to put together some sort of series where Adam challenges Jeff to things that Jeff is uncomfortable with, and Jeff challenges Adam to things that Adam is uncomfortable with.
Adam's like, if you have a longer travel, Adam's like, if you have a longer travel and you nose case with a 180, you have more travel. And I'm like, but if you only have a 150, you have 30 millimeters more before you nose case.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. Yeah. No, you
like cheating,
motherfuckers. Need to,
his tire's gonna touch down before mine because this is longer.
I like 30 millimeters. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Who wants to take this question? If you run faster rebound on your front or more pressure in the front, will it make your head angle slacken as you plow in a rock garden?
Okay, so I have a video queued up for this. Hold please. We'll see if we can actually get it to play. Since I've been having issues with that actually working. Okay, so
I can give you a physics-based answer in about 15 seconds while he queues this up.
Yeah, do that first.
Okay, so if you run faster rebound in the front, your bike will ride higher. If you run more pressure in the front, your bike will ride higher static. Like faster rebounds dynamic, more pressure is static. So, you'll feel it more in your hands, more pressure. You
want that to go on the screen, Adam?
No, but I have a delay.
Do I have to add that? I think I gotta add it.
Do you have a video on your screen?
That's the video right there. That's not even a rock garden. Right there, that's just a natural timing. So fucking step up your game.
So
I personally find this video this video obnoxious that he's going so fast.
It's not. It's like medium fast. If you go fast enough to do what he's doing, you just have to understand how to visualize this line.
So with your rebound, you want your fork to react fast enough to what you're doing. So if you're not going high speed through rock gardens, you're not going to want to.
Oh my God! Look at all your tabs. Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No,
I'd love to click in and see what those all are.
Important stuff.
Oh, they're all Google Excel documents. All work stuff.
You could do that if you had your bike set up slow as fuck, right? You have to know that jump's coming. So yeah, as much pressure as you need to support your riding style, and then as fast as you can set your front fork without it being a problem. That's it.
Yep. That's
pretty dope.
It's all based on how it works for you.
Yeah.
Rebound and air pressures are something that you have to experiment with yourself, because there is no base. I mean, there's a base setting, but depending on how you ride and how you want your bike to perform, you have to get in there and twist some knobs. So this video is the first day on the new V3. This is prototype bike.
It's literally like we designed the new frame structure. Adam machined it, welded it together, took a video of him riding it the first day that he could get his hands on it.
Yeah, I welded that bike the day before this video.
Yeah.
And that, I've never ridden that section that fast. And so, as Steve was talking about earlier, Hall Ranch the Bitterbrush Rock Garden is kind of the test for our bikes because that rock garden is 1.5 miles from our shop. And
it's like,
Aw.
it's pretty technical.
And so
I
I
get
went
Will and we could
rode
have like a live chat with the cats.
Yeah, of course. No,
He
he doesn't have the bird in his mouth.
Needs to
But
dial
that
down.
literally was the proving point, or like the proving grounds for this bike. You know, literally riding from the shop right where I built it to that rock garden to go through that section. And like I rode it 2 or 3 times to film it. And it is by far the fastest and smoothest I've ever ridden it before. Like right after that is that kind of like infamous rock roll that everybody's been posting about over the past year or two. And I was coming into it so fast that I almost aired into it. And it was not very comfortable because definitely wasn't planning for it that fast. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean the bike's been developed to meet an extraordinarily high level between these two fuckers, right? These two, you know, you guys know that flat rim caps aren't like totally modern, but whatever, it's cool. These two fuckers have tested the bike, have pushed it as far as you're going to push it. That's for goddamn sure. And we're still working to make it move forward. So
Yeah.
that's what drove Steve.
Always moving forward. That's the big thing.
Also,
Yes. Spit it out.
oh, that's all I had.
Oh.
Yeah. Lots of good conversation, Cat. I like it.
Somebody wants to know what kind of bike. Brian, what bike does he have spec?
Brian? Anybody?
John,
Anybody?
Anybody want to act
what do
as
you
Brian?
mean? Yeah. We know John. John's a regular of a Reeb romp.
Motherfuckers.
But his question is 3 beers deep.
Yeah, look, let's bring some real technical questions because I'm at least 3 beers deep. I'm like 3 Manhattans and 3 beers deep. And I will answer your question.
DVO Topaz. So the Topaz, the Topaz is our stock shock on the 130 travel setup. So the short travel setup. It's a really great air shock.
Yeah. So, all right, I'm going to go off. The Topaz is great. The Topaz is great specifically because it has the most wide open of open settings of all shocks that we can get, right? So when you're actually trying to slay it going downhill, it has by far the most open compression settings that you can get from anything that's off the shelf right now. And it will just down the mountain. It also has a trail setting, and that's like, pretty moderately good. Out on par with most shocks open settings. The closed setting is very locked out. But I think from a 3-position shock, the open setting on the Topaz for a normal rider is going to be the closest to meeting the actual compression damping requirements that most people need if you're not going like warp speed, right? So like wide open on a Topaz, if you're just pedaling around and want it to absolutely be buttery, it's primo. It's super duper primo. And it's super easy to service. It's super easy to like adjust progression on. You can pop spacers in and out, whatever. Easy peasy. You don't even have to take the shock off the bike. It's a great shock. It's that main thing that makes me sold on it is how wide open it is. And like, yeah, these two tall, ridiculous fuckers that we're talking to on here. I don't know how to point to them. Whatever.
Those
Those guys, they need more aggressive compression damping settings, but the rest of them don't. And the Topaz is one of the only shocks that really comes out of the box, ready to go, wide open, works for everybody that's like actually riding at a recreational pace.
We added to the peanut gallery.
I'm here.
That's
Murph, do you have an eyeliner?
Yeah, I had to put it on real quick, so I looked good.
Murph Dog, really coming in. What does Murph Dog got to say?
At least you're Steve the Space Cowboy now.
Please do share your.
What's up, Murph?
Just hanging out, man. Watching the snowfall.
So for anybody watching this, Mike Murfitt from Traction Coffee.
Hello.
Pro BMXer for Reeb. And good dude. And he's in the peanut gallery on the left-hand side, so we figured we might as well send him the invite.
Yeah, who knew that we had a 20-inch BMX bike made by Reeb?
It's pretty sweet, right?
Yeah, Murphy has it.
It's the best bike I've ever
One
ridden.
person did know that. Murphy.
Right.
Perfect.
Yeah, we like to make bikes that are fun. There isn't anything really that stops us. Obviously, we always have custom bike geometry upcharges. I think we had that question pretty early up in the feed, but yeah, we do custom geometry on all of our bikes, even the Squeeb. We will do custom reach and stack adjustments. But yeah, we do a 20-inch BMX bike. We have 24-inch kids bikes that have been previously known as the Dweeb instead of the Squeeb. And that's a hardtail. That's not a full suspension. But yeah, we like to do it all. I mean, there isn't anything that really stops us. We've had trials bikes done. Jeff had a trials bike.
No, I have another one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's awesome. So Murph, we don't want to put you on the spot, but what do you think of a Traction Reeb coffee collab? Because
Dude, I'm about it.
Dude, I mean, I don't want to like blow you up, but we've already got 10 pounds pre-sold.
Let's do it, dude. It's on. Game on.
Yeah.
10 pounds right there.
Everybody put it up in the comments of what we should call it.
Ooh, that's a good idea. We need a good Reeb coffee name.
Yeah.
And then this is a good one for Adam. No, actually, this is a good one for Steve. Have you ever made wasn't he testing the Squeeb with the dual crown?
No,
yeah.
Tyler was.
Tyler, right.
So hold on. I'll pull up a picture real quick. Maybe.
Look at this.
We got
look at this. We got a few pounds there, dude. A few kilos.
Let's do it, dude.
We're gonna have to make sure that we capture all these people's names so we can really hunt them down after we make this dope coffee, and be like, "Listen, you guys, you committed to 10 pounds."
Yeah, you guys will all be getting emails and phone calls.
Exactly. we made this just for you. Look at this one.
Dude, you need one. Best BMX bike ever. The only one I've never broken.
Here we go.
Murph, tell us quick about your BMX bike. I know BMX bikes are pretty standard. It's like, do you want a 20.5 or a 21.75? Like, what's your geo on your bike?
Mine is the top tube is 21 inches and the rear end's 13.65. The best thing about it is like super stiff. So when I like first started riding it, I had a hard time doing things like tire slides and stuff because it was so stiff. So like kind of took me a while to get used to it, but like I think that attributes to the fact that I haven't broken one, you know.
Why is that? When the bike flexes a little bit more, it's more forgiving on a tire slide?
Yeah, so do you think that
I could get on
older? And
no, No way. He's
That's
still
probably
posting.
also
He's posting dope clips. No, for real though. Like that. You know, it's so funny. Like I remember, not to name drop, but like years and years and years ago, I was at Woodward and I was riding. Like we used to go there once a week, and Jamie Bestwick got on my bike. He's like, "I can't believe how much these things flex, man." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like mountain bikes don't flex." And then I never put it in perspective until I started going to the pump track on my 2.9er.
Yeah.
And I would like ride the pump track on my 29er, and I was like, "This thing's pretty dope." And then I got a proper like Destroyer 26-inch dirt jump, so you're basically downsizing several inches on the wheels. And I was like, "Holy shit, that 2.9er does." Like relatively speaking, like it flexes a lot. And then you start thinking like, all right, now I can see what Jamie's talking about when you're riding a 20-inch with rigid cranks, rigid fork, like everything. You're like, man, I could see how he's like would say that a mountain bike flexes. But at the time I was like, what are you talking about? A mountain bike doesn't flex. But you can feel that like when you go for a tire slide, like it hangs up a little bit more.
Oh yeah, like the first few times I did it, it like snapped my front end down, and I was like, "What the hell is going on?" And like, so I just have to push into them a little harder. But I think it's
like,
just because it's the same as the mountain bike tube set.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. You just have to snap into it harder. But yeah, the oversized down tube helps a lot with like the bottom bracket flex.
That's awesome.
What are you drinking, Murph?
So, it's our new coffee beer with Loveland Ale Works.
Yeah, Murph. Seriously.
Nice.
Coffee beer. That's sick.
Yeah, dude. We're doing another one with another really cool beer brand here soon that you guys will see.
Nice.
Here's one for Adam. Adam just did. What'd you just do? 36 inches? 40 inches?
No, it was like 36 or 37.
36 on a 29er. That's ridiculous. That's like that's really ridiculous. I did 45 and a half inches on a 26 and a half inch mountain bike.
So here's the thing though. Adam,
I would think on a 29er now. I'm probably at Adam tight tops. Like that's all I got.
So yeah, the Bunnyhop contest. Literally, this is the first time I've ever bunny hopped over like something that was being raised.
Something
it was super fun. Something that was being raised, like an actual bar.
Oh, right.
I've never seen how high I could actually go.
Yeah,
did you think that it helped you though? Like I feel like
whenever
I've done bunny hop competitions, like it helps because like if you just put that bar at 36 inches, you'd fuck it up. But if you do like 26, 28, 30, and you keep going up, like it helps.
You have to have a goal.
Yeah.
I mean, because if somebody just asked me to bunny hop, like, you can only go so high. But if you're actually aiming for something, but one thing that was really interesting to notice in the bunny hop comp is that, like, what's his name? Who is the guy that was running it?
Ryan Leach.
Yeah, Ryan Leach. So he's a trials guy. So he would come up to the bar at almost a complete stop and hop over it. And,
he was side hopping it? Really?
Yeah. And there was another guy.
Because Ryan Leach.
There was another guy in the comp, like on a trail bike, like 29-inch full suspension trail bike, that was sprinting as hard as he could into hopping it. And so if you can see this photo of me hopping the bar, that was pretty much landing and immediately stopping because there was people like 15, maybe 20 feet after the bar. So there's a big difference in bunny hop technique that I was coming into it. I mean, slow, like I was definitely rolling, but I could stop in time, but it still involved me skidding and like throwing my feet on the ground to stop. And then like people on trail bikes sprinting into it and then like hitting the crowd. So
right. So the thing that I noticed about your picture that I was going to comment on was you totally did the new school style, which is where you put the top tube under your leg.
Yep.
And you don't put the tire under your ass. Like your tire was alongside your leg.
It switched off to the side.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you did it awesome. And I was curious like how you did that because, you know, like not to be a boomer, but like we always did it just completely straight. And like when your seat is in your chest and your ass is hitting your rear tire, like that's as high as you go.
That's as high as
and you totally had the new school style, like off to the side where you're sort of like, not really tabled, but hanging off the side a little bit. And like you're allowing the back tire to get alongside your hips so you can squeak out a few extra inches.
Yeah, I mean,
like how did you like practice that? You just did it?
37-inch bunny hop with 29-inch wheels. You got to do it.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, it's awesome. But like, did you just like do that on the spot, or like did you practice that?
No, they just kept raising it up, and I got out. And the thing is, after every time we cleared the bar, they gave us a pint of beer.
So here's
oh really?
Yeah. So I
think we have to
mitigate
the whole situation moving forward. We only use the Reeb clunker for these competitions.
The clunker?
I didn't realize that you got
That's it.
beer every time you cleared the bar. I would have beat all you guys.
Unfair. We're unfairly advanced in the bunny hop competition.
I would have beat all you guys, and I would have streaked a quad.
Right. That clunker is insane. Like,
well, fucking yank it up, dude. It's just a big pull. That's all.
Yeah, love that bike.
Practice bullshit. Adam practices like a motherfucker. Also, he's really tall and lanky, so his natural bunny hop is about 16 inches taller than my natural bunny hop, which I feel is totally unfair.
And he's higher than you can bunny hop.
No, yeah, he can just pick up his legs, and it's higher than I will ever be able to bunny hop, and that's completely unfair because I'm actually better at bunny hopping than Adam is. My legs are just about a meter shorter than his.
Jeff, I think we all need to play a game of bike. Actually, probably the four of us.
Dude,
that would be a great game of bike.
Maybe that's our next. I don't think it could be live, but maybe we could do a Instagram.
I'd be more skilled in the firearms and drinking department. And the rest of you would be more skilled in the other.
You could shoot and we'll bunny hop over it.
Yeah, no, that sounds great.
Yeah.
So I could say with 1,000% certainty that a game of bike between the four of us,
please do tell.
Would like Murph could destroy all of us. I could destroy all of you. Yeah. And Adam could destroy all of us. Because like our skills are so different.
Yeah,
that's
like Adam will do shit that I could never do, and I could do stupid things that you could never do, and Murph could do stupid things I could never do, and Steve could probably do stupid shit that we could never do.
No,
like that's what's so funny. And like I remember like back in the day, I'd always do like bike with Aaron Chase or Adam Hauk, and like it was always like gentleman rules. Like, all right, I'm not gonna do bar spins because like I know you can't do bar spins. I'm not gonna just like kill you. Like so it'd be like trying to like. But if we really just wanted to take each other out, like I'm sure in 4 turns we could take each other out. Like if we just stick to like our skill set, which are like so unique, like Murph could take us out in 1 second, like no doubt. And Adam will just be like, I'll just fucking jump over this or monster truck this.
In the coffee brewing challenge, Murph has it.
It's all right.
So it all depends. So,
in the pounding double IPA, Steve's got us.
So down in Sedona, I played a game of bike with a bunch of guys from the Revel Bike crew, and the thing was like they were doing knack-knacks and bar spins and 360s, and you know when you're actually playing a game of bike, I guess it's a little bit different when you're all together as opposed to separate, but everybody has a trick that somebody else can't do.
Totally.
And you probably don't land it your first try. So everybody's out trying like a hard trick. Like I was doing a foot jam on a rock, and like it took me like 40 tries.
Dude, that picture was so sick.
Yeah. Well, it took me so long to get it. And like in the game of bike, I did it. But I mean I cased it, so it didn't count. But everybody was like, oh, like nobody can do that. But
yeah, that was so sick.
Like I didn't land it, so nobody else had to do it, and you move on. And
I'm gonna do all my tricks underhanded.
I'm going to do all my tricks with a 44 Magnum on my belt.
Hell yeah. You have to be shooting it off while you're doing the trick, dude. Bike pop.
I just saw an Instagram clip the other day, Murph, you might have seen it, of some BMXer from like Florida or something. He had like a little edit, and he 180s a roof gap and shoots his gun.
Yeah.
Before he lands. Did you see that?
Levy.
Yeah.
That was Jason Levy. I guarantee.
It was so bad.
I was like, what is that?
For that, I loaned him a gun for that. That motherfucker.
Sour?
He's not a responsible person. Don't loan him a gun because
Sure.
I have not gotten that gun back.
Yeah, that's scary. Yeah,
Do we want to answer questions, or do we want to answer questions in the feed anymore, or do we
Hold
are
on.
like we too?
Well, I mean, this is getting to the point where it's just a nice chat between all of us, but there is
Yeah, just hanging it.
There is another question from Corey Davis. Has Reeb considered a larger tubing for its bikes? I feel that it looks a bit off with modern style.
I can talk to this.
Oh God.
Folks, yes, modern style.
Don't go anywhere, guys. I'll be back.
That's a big thing. Jeff's got to piss. I've got free reign now. I've got control of this channel. Watch out.
Yeah.
He's coming. Truth.
It's about to get
Don't be
scary.
afraid. Don't be afraid of the truth. So, yes, larger tubing for its bikes. So, no, we don't need a larger tube. We don't need larger tubing.
This is
What the fuck is going on there?
Dave.
An Alki in a BMX?
Yeah, you're distracting me. Okay, so no, larger tubing is not necessarily inherently better in any way than the tubing that we use. There's a really like dark art to lateral stability, lateral like torsional stiffness, all that fun stuff. You want to use tubes that are stiff enough to contain the forces that you're going to put into them, and that keeps the bike feeling predictable. But you don't want to go more than that. You don't want to go more than that, even a little bit, right? You start getting too stiff, you start getting chatter, you start getting challenges when bikes are leaned over. If you look to the motorcycle world, the entire world of MotoGP, which is like the most focused on traction of any motorsports, is focused on the torsional and lateral stiffness of frames, as opposed to the reaction of like regular forces that would incur into a fork or a shock, right? Like, yeah,
Where's Will?
It's pretty clear how to set up a fork and a shock, how to like take things in a straight line, but when you lean over, totally different thing. Torsional rigidity, lateral rigidity, all of this is what it constitutes the feel of a bike. And we have absolutely identified that we like how this bike feels, right?
Hey guys.
We probably could move in the rear end is a little stiffer direction if we're really looking at the end like absolute level of feel, but it's real close as it is, and the level of torsional rigidity that we get from the tube set that we use is exactly right. So yeah, it does. Okay, so you say it. I feel that it looks a bit off with the modern style. I bet if we align the chainstays visually with the down tube and all of that stuff, I bet if it was all like visually aligned, you'd feel okay with it. But legitimately, we're looking at like, how does this thing feel when you have it slayed over in a corner, like on the rear brakes, on the front brakes, go through a braking section into like it's where we want it to be. So large tubing would make it stiffer. That's not good. Stiffer is not necessarily good. Stiffer is stiffer. We have fine-tuned this whole deal into a place where it is the stiffness that these, like the silly man with the handlebar mustache and the silly man with the flat-brimmed hat are super duper good at riding bikes.
Are you talking about hipsters?
No, sorry, I wasn't talking about you.
Damn it.
But the people that are good at riding bikes, I was talking about them. Those motherfuckers are really good at riding bikes, and we're actually in a position to pivot on their feedback. So yeah, we'll get stiffer if we need to get stiffer, but it's not a like bigger tubes make it better type of scenario. It's it's fully like we need to make it stiffer in these types of scenarios situation, and there's a lot of work that goes into understanding how to translate that feel, that subjective feel, into a physical thing, right? Like
the comparison is in our steel bikes when we went to a 44 millimeter down tube, which is 1 3/4 inch down tube. We were working with True Temper to create the first ever 44 millimeter down tube. So we went to a much, much, much larger diameter down tube, but also decreased wall thickness. So we went to a larger diameter, so we had stiffness, but we decreased the wall thickness. So we still had the supple ride attributes that comes with steel bikes. So one thing that we learned with the very large diameter steel tubing is that lateral stiffness also grows. So with the Squeen, if you notice, our down tube and our top tube are not round. They are, yes.
There it is.
Send me that.
That is a legendary photo of BMX Surfit bunny hopping over a donk Camaro to flat.
That's so sick. Murph, send me that. I'll put it on the screen.
This is how we live our lives.
Bring back Pinner.
Yeah.
Bring back
Pinner.
This is like what everybody does on like normal weeknights is a Zoom happy hour. We're just doing it live on YouTube.
Yeah, pretty much at this point.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I was like, I told Jeff, cut it off, save it for another one.
And somehow we still have 55 people watching, so that's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
55 rude boys.
But
appreciate you guys for listening.
Hey, Steph, that's 5 rude boys and 50 other people.
What do you say?
I didn't hear it.
I said that's 5 rude boys and 50 other people.
5 rude boys and 50 other people.
Or maybe 50 rude boys and 5 other people. Look at that. I think 6 Cowboys hammered.
But yeah, so to end that, the round diameter, like large diameter tubing is much different than the aluminum tubing that is the same width, but smaller cross section. So it's laterally it's shorter, but it's the same width tubing.
Yeah, because I'm the one that's hammered.
Sorry.
We've been talking a long time.
What else do we have in here? So Tyler Brady is wondering about
Stop booing.
Gearbox.
You I can get off your high horse. Hi, Steve Pro Size. I love you. But
What's Steve saying?
yeah, but let's defer to Murph Dog for all future comments on everything.
On what? Everything?
There we go. Murph.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
That's right.
Do you see the guy sitting on the roof?
Yeah, who's that?
Oh,
They were from like New Orleans Brewing Company. There's like 30 of them there, and they were like, dude, we showed up to do this, and there's like 30 dudes watching. It was the worst thing I've ever had to do in my life. I had to like sprint through the lunchroom.
Look at that face.
I mean, it looks real good, dude.
Dude, it was scary.
Yeah, I mean, so that is a loading dock, and that Camaro is not short.
It's like 6 foot tall, I think.
Yeah. So not only just like, loading dock, jumping over a car, whatever, but that's like full on 1980s, like Rick Montano bunny hopping over cars to flat. Like,
dude, that is awesome. That is really awesome.
I really thought it was a good idea until the car showed up, and then I was like, oh shit. Like, I have to bunny hop like 3 feet over the car, and it's on a loading dock. And then I got scared.
And then you have to go all the way to the ground to land.
The first try I did on it, like I got like super boner aired, and I thought I was gonna like case the car, and somehow got over it and landed like back tire heavy and broke my seat in half.
Yeah, that's super sick picture.
Dude, it's a great picture.
Yeah, we should probably get that back up on the Reeb BMX page.
Yeah, that's good for that bike because that bike does freaking party, man.
So here's my blast from the past story. I remember years ago, I went to, I think it was Portland, and I was going to do a photo shoot for, an old bike company that I used to work for. And there was a loading dock, and then there was a dumpster after it, and it was going to kind of be like the same thing. You had to like pedal across a loading dock and then bunny hop over like an open dumpster and like land a flat, sort of similar thing. But it was like a pretty short runway. Like you didn't have a big lead in. So I figured like, well, I'm going to start on the flat ground next to the loading dock, sprint my ass off, and see if I could even like come close to like reenacting it on flat ground first. And then if I could, then I would like step up and do it on a loading dock and do it over the garbage can. So I go to sprint and I take like 4 pedal strokes. My chain jumped off and I completely flipped over the handlebars, never even got my hands off the handlebars, augured directly into the ground, still death gripped on the handlebars, and ground my knuckles on the ground because it happened so fast that both of my knuckles were completely skinned.
Oh my God.
It sucks so bad.
That sounds miserable, dude. My hands hurt just thinking about that.
Oh my God.
Dude, that was so long ago that was like,
I feel like checking out of this whole fucking chat thing because of how that feels.
Yeah.
That was so long ago. Like that was when I started putting like, I used to take apart like two or three speed front chainring crank sets, and I would take like the 32 off of like a triple chainring crank and just put it on my dirt jump bike, and then go to sprint and realize like the fucking chain just jumps off and you go flipping over the handlebars because it has shifting ramps in it. So then I finally got like MRP non-shifting chain rings, and it never happened again. But like, as I did, I like set up my bike as a single speed because my trials bikes always had gears on the back. So this was like one of my first ones, had that shifting chain ring. And I like looked at the loading dock and I was like, I don't know if I can make it. Let me try it on the flat ground. This will be super safe. Let me just see if I get to speed. And I take like a few cranks, chain jumps off. Like, Murph, how bad as a BMXer is it when your chain breaks? There's like literally nothing worse.
Like
there's nothing worse.
Like that's my biggest fear when it comes to riding a bike. It's not like breaking any other part but a chain. Like, dude, it is
the worst. Yeah, it's the worst.
Dude, because it just like it doesn't. Yeah, nothing good.
Expectations like suddenly go to zero. Like,
yeah,
there's nothing left.
There's nothing you can do.
Everything you intended was just gone.
Does it come?
I think the two worst things that could happen to you as like a bike rider is the chain brake or striking your pedal on a rock or a stump or something, like when you don't expect and you're relaxed and it just sends you right over the bars.
Yeah, when you like blow a hand off because of it, you just get sent. Oh yeah, breaking
So
chains.
You got a worse one, Adam?
Are there motherfuckers still watching this, or is it
Worst chain brake?
So what do you got? You got to choose between a chain brake or pedal strike, rock strike, stump strike, something where like
100%?
you're pedaling and you're normally like kind of relaxed and you're really getting after it, and you just clip that pedal and you just go flying over the bars and just auger.
I almost think we should open this up.
Flying over the bars, and I ended up with my camelback catching a fucking tree branch, and I got hung by my camelback on a tree branch in the air.
Well, Steve, if you're on a camelback, you deserve that.
Well,
Yeah, that's why I didn't wear it.
I'm just saying. Man. I'm just saying that I clipped a rock, fucking flew into a tree, and happened to have a random ass fucking branch lock me up in the air, and I had to wait there until somebody came because I was so far up in the air.
I'm pretty sure people in the comment field over here could
Andrew knows what's up.
One of my worst chain brakes or handlebar clips, but
yeah, chain brake is the worst, man.
Yeah,
have any of you broken handlebars?
I've broken a handlebar because I've only run aluminum handlebars.
Have you, Steve?
Oh, I've broken like 14 handlebars. Maybe not 14. That's the wrong number. But I've broken a lot of handlebars.
All right, so here we go again with back in my day. I rode for Club Roost when they were like the first brand making riser bars.
Yeah, I've broken
prior to that, like you either had like Answer like 90-gram handlebars or like there was nothing else. So like Club Roost started making riser bars. I broke probably like 3 or 4 of those bars. Luckily, every single bar broke going up. Like it was always Bunnyhop.
Yeah. Oh, that's
like I'd go to Bunnyhop and then the handlebar just rips off and you smash into the wall. Or like you go to Bunnyhop and it rips off and you smash over the bench.
Yeah.
Thank God none of them ever broke on a drop because I would be screwed so bad.
I've only ever the only handlebar that's ever broken. I've broken a lot of handlebars, but the only handlebar that's ever broke on the drop was a set of Easton EC90s way back in the day.
Yeah,
and those things like they just fell apart. It was like there's not even any resistance when they did break.
Why does Curtis keep commenting about the gold bike?
Because he loves his bike.
It's a gold bike. It's
let me pull it up.
Your fucking bike.
Yeah. Hold on. Hey, click.
Let's figure out how to get a picture of Curtis's bike up here right now. Oh, it's gold as fuck.
Ooh, that is sick.
It's gold as fuck. And it looks brilliant.
Yeah, that's pretty sick.
I mean, everything gold.
XX.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All gold, all the time.
Yeah, it's pretty dope.
Yeah, that's really dope.
Yeah, it's as far as you can go in the gold direction. That's for sure.
Yeah. Gold is a tough color.
But you got to embrace it if you're going to run a Cane Creek shock.
That's true. You got to go all the way.
Yep. And XX1 drivetrain and HT pedals. Yep.
Gold earthing.
Yep. Bike's pretty dope.
It is sick.
Yeah, that bike is super dope.
I rock with it.
Curtis's bike is the first bike I've ever welded with no derailleur guides.
Derailleur guides?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Wireless. Yeah, it's the
no
first
derailleur guide.
Yeah, first wireless squeed.
Wow. That's
Oh,
sick.
Oh, no cable guides.
oh,
No cable
yeah,
guides.
no cable guides for the
Really?
back.
He has Axis on it?
Yeah.
Oh
Is he a
shit!
dentist or a doctor or something?
Does he have diamonds on that gold bike too? Some diamond bezels in there, dude.
Yeah, is that like actual gold?
Yeah, it's a gold plate.
It's actual gold plated.
Yep.
That's awesome.
I want a gold bike now.
I mean,
I know you do, Murph.
I had a pedal once with gold pins.
That's
Like the
sick.
pins that you put in were gold plated, but then like you literally ride it like twice and they just wear right off and then they were silver.
My pins just fall out of my pedals, so
Actually, I think they're
pinless pedals.
no, they're up there. Never mind. Too involved. But yeah, they're pretty sweet. They're black and gold plated pins, and then you'd ride them like twice and they'd freaking wear right off.
Are people still watching this, or is it just the four of us chatting?
I actually don't even care. I'm having fun just talking to you guys. 49 people.
Been some bars.
49 people.
Did
Y'all
I?
motherfuckers are losing out.
The worst bike failure I've ever had was
And bars ghosting my bike off jumps. Yeah, don't ghost your bike. Ride your bike off the jumps. God damn it, Steve. I know how you roll. You roll big.
Emma has come in several times with questions for Bunnyhop.
whoa.
Emma. My is 19 inches.
So that's what you got, Steve? 19?
If you really push me, it's probably like 23.
All right. What do you got, Murph?
I think I've
I
done
got Murph.
40 at Woodward.
Yeah,
I was gonna say I would think that you got it.
This is not a fair.
I think I've done higher, like up something, because it's like easy for me. It's easier to like look at
Yeah.
pop up it, but yeah, I think 40 is official.
Yeah, I got 37.
That's pretty freaking high.
I'm at 37 if that's his number.
If you're at 37, then Adam's at like 55.
Oh yeah.
55 plus 14.
The difference is that I can actually wear like cowboy hats and fun fucking glasses.
So what are you saying? Adam's not fun? He would be fun. He just looked like a village person.
What?
Jeff, what's your Bunnyhop?
What?
My highest ever was 45 and a half, but I would say now
I'm not one to judge. It's all right.
What's the record for highest Bunnyhop now?
It's
now?
higher than what Jeff got.
Yeah, because like people started doing like the side jump kind
Like
of
the
thing.
whip.
So yeah, so I think probably like for a mountain. Well, actually, I don't. It changes because like back in the day, it was like Lopes had the world record on a BMX bike at 49 inches, but then I did 45 and a half on a mountain bikes, and I was always like, well, a mountain bike wheel's 6 inches bigger, so like technically
Way
I
different.
went higher.
Yeah.
But now the world record is probably at least 50 inches.
Yeah, I've seen
But
Brock
then they do it on 24-inch bikes, so it's I don't know, it's all over the place.
Without
do some like
But the technique has gotten
it should all
gotten
be
way
like-
better. Like now they do the side off the side, so like it's just like people are stronger, faster. The technique is different, so just like you go higher. I like just did a fucking buddy hop, just like tire up your
Yeah.
ass, whatever, and like that was as high as you went. Now it's like off the side, and you can go higher, and you tabletop it, and like guys can go really freaking high now.
And that's why cowboy hats need to be included in this whole matrix.
Dude, Adam did 37 inches on a 29er. That's ridiculous.
I don't give
yeah,
a
that's
fuck.
fucking gnarly.
Look at that stupid.
That was my first time.
Fuck.
I think that like, I mean, even just on a like doing it on a 29er isn't even worth the 3 extra inches. It's worth like an extra foot because like a 2.9er is just like so much harder to bunny hop in the first place.
No, dude, you should get negative points.
Like a 26-inch bike
You're just
just pops higher. Like it just pops higher easier, you know? So it's not even like you could be like, oh, 37 plus 3 inches for a wheel. Like it's way harder to bunny hop a 2.9er. It just comes off the ground different and everything. Like the smaller bikes are just more compact. It's just easier. So to do 37 inches on a 2.9er, that's like freaking awesome.
Yeah, y'all are badasses.
The world record is 57 inches
Oh my god!
For a bunny hop or for a side hop?
for a bunny hop.
For a 29er?
Really?
And what did
Whatever.
that world record?
Rick
Kosick or something like that?
Koikik
Okay.
from Netherlands.
Yeah. I'm surprised that he did it on a bunny hop because he's a trials rider that I know for sure could side hop way higher.
Well, no, it's a
like-
side hop. It's a 20-inch bunny hop, or it's a 20-inch trials bike side hop.
Okay. That guy is unbelievable. Him and Andre Burton. It's like the perfect combination of like the geometry of those bikes now and stuff. And just like, dude, those guys are like world-class plyometric athletes now. Like if you had like any athlete on the continent do like a plyometric box jump, whatever, like they're right there, whether it's a basketball player, football player, whatever, they can jump just as high and then they just do it with the bike. So
If there's any way that I could diminish their achievements by just like standing here without my pants on, I will do it.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, that's really insane.
You'd have to drink some champagne first, Steve.
Oh, dude, I've had enough to drink. Fuck. Yeah. Your fucking boy Mike, who's not been active on here, brought me in like irresponsible amount of alcohol.
That'll happen.
Oh yeah, where is Eldridge? He hasn't been.
Who knows?
He was here on the Oscar Blues account, I think.
Yeah.
Then he got scared, dude. He had to go to bed.
Lives out of internet service.
Yeah, he ran out of internet time up there in the mountains.
To be fair, like power is out up the whole mountain right now.
I know,
He
dude. I was
probably
up.
has like the
I'm down in
like
my
the
work right
satellite
now.
internet service that you get. HughesNet. He has like HughesNet or something.
I was up in Lions earlier, and we had to bring our Goal Zero to roast coffee with because the power's.
When I went to go get beer for this live stream, power was out in the shop.
Yep.
Dude, we've been
Crazy.
talking for 2.5 hours.
I was just looking for any more questions that we could end this with.
No, everybody just wants us to shut the fuck up. That's
And
where we are.
corporate tried to shut us down over an hour and a half ago.
Who's
The
corporate?
Chad.
Oh,
He's like, save it for next time. But this is just fun to bullshit with you guys. I don't know.
Dude,
like now I see why everybody wants to do Zoom parties. I haven't fucking talked to anybody in like weeks.
Yeah,
Dude,
it's
I know.
hard. It's hard. This whole fucking social distancing. No, it's fucking hard.
yeah.
Also, the Squeen is actually a good bike from a kinematics perspective. So I don't know if anybody else fucking cares, but you guys care.
Yeah, kinematics.
So Curtis has a very good question.
Please,
that I'd like to, answer. He said, so how long did it take you guys to come up with the concept for the gold bike?
About as long as it took us to understand what the color of gold is.
I would say about 6 to 9 days.
Yeah. So number one, gold. You would think gold is a solid color, but it's not.
It's
So-
fucking not.
First off, you got to figure out what color gold you would actually like. But the straight answer to this is we can do any color powder coat. That is a custom option. So if you would like to do something that matches a certain component or parts that you have on your bike, reach out to us because we would love to do custom colors.
We would love to do it.
It's definitely a possibility.
We would love to do it. The color of my taint after I haven't showered in about 7 days. Specific, real good level of gold. And we can do that. We can match it. We can color match it.
Exactly. Color match.
Color matched. Bring your photos.
Murphy, what color is our coffee going to be?
Brown.
Good one. Good one. This guy's good. This guy is good.
We can go any color. Brown. Well, the coffee itself is brown.
Sorry, I know there's much more to it.
Dude, I don't care.
Fucking come to my house and pour me a fucking. I'm serious. Like, I want some goddamn good coffee. So come to my house. Pour me some fucking cold, whatever it is, cold. I don't even know what it's called. Cold float, no, cold. Float.
Murph, you do the thing where you like
Murph,
taste it like.
Just come to my house. I'm lonely. Pour me some good coffee.
Yeah, what do you call that? Like cupping or something?
Yeah, we do cupping every day. Yeah, we do lots of cupping. That's how you grade it, dude.
Is it? I love that. Let's do it. Would
you say the Reeb traction roast would be a light roast or a dark roast?
I think we need to let the people decide. I think it would be best served as like a medium roast.
I think the only vote for the name of the coffee would be the gold roast.
That's true. There you go, dude. We could do the Columbia Gold, dude.
Yeah, the Columbia Gold.
That definitely sounds like you stole some cocaine.
You know who could come up with a good name is Dale. He named a lot of the hotbox stuff.
Yeah.
He could come up with a funny one.
Yeah, where's Dale? He's in this chat somewhere. Or what?
Is he?
He said he was gonna, and I was gonna send him a link to get him to join in unexpectedly, but then I didn't.
I saw him earlier in the window of Chub Burger just walking around on the phone.
Oh, nice. All right, dudes. Well, we've been on here for 2 hours and 42 minutes. We got to save something for next week.
We have to go to at least 2 hours and 43 minutes, and then we can get off.
Listen, are we all in for next week?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah.
Steph, is he in?
Steph's in bed.
Oh, all right. So get approval from her. Steve could work late.
Maybe Steve,
you got that perfect backdrop. We need to green screen you and like put you on a tropical background or something.
Dude, I was just thinking about a green screen. Oh, duels for Steve next week.
Maybe Steve and I will be on the same chat next week.
Ooh, there you go. Then you guys can get drunk.
I wouldn't count on social distancing being done over deck soon.
I mean, we could be 6 feet apart. That's like one side of the couch and the next side of the couch.
Spread your arms, dude. That's 6 feet.
All right. Okay. Maybe.
Yeah.
Steve's number one.
All right. Well, thank you for everybody that had comments.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for everybody that watched this. I think we're going to have to do this next week. So next week, Murph, you in?
I'm in, dude. Just let me know.
Yeah, Murph has to be in. Because Murph doesn't know the fuck anything about this bike. So, yeah, he has to be in here.
Yeah, I need to ride one soon. I've ridden the old one. I haven't ridden the new one.
Next week, we don't even have to talk about bikes. We'll just talk shit.
We'll have the coffee ready.
This is fun. We'll invite like some randos in.
Hey, Murph.
There you go.
Murph, what do you think about this haircut? I did it in quarantine.
I think it's dope.
Dude,
it's a mohawk. I just don't have the fucking...
Can I come over so you can look at, dude? I need to get rid of some of this, you know?
Yeah, maybe we'll all do full, like, glued mohawks next week.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do live haircuts.
Let's just shave our full heads on live.
Sounds rad.
Totally.
All right. Let's get the coffee ready for next week. We're going to debut it on the live.
All right.
Perfect. I've got a surprise about coffee. Maybe not next week, but maybe the week after.
All right, dudes. Well, good chatting with you. We'll do it again next week.
All right.
Later, boys.
All
Good
right,
talking,
see ya.
everybody.
You guys are all
See ya.
dumbasses. I love you. Bye.
Bye.
Same. See you guys.